Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto is kidnapped the night of the Kyuubi attack part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Konohagakure. Two ninjas were currently running along a battle-torn land, making a hasty escape after they accomplished their mission in Konoha. If all went well, this would be a big score for both of them. Both ninjas had on headbands that had 3 diagonal lines as a symbol for their ninja village, Yugakure. The two men wore slim burgundy flak jackets, white pants, and carried retractable weapons on their hips. One of the men, who had messy brown hair, a distinctive scar running diagonally across his face over his nose, and had his headband wrapped around his forehead, shouted, "Make sure you don't lose the package. Our village will be wiped out if we fail." The second man was bald with his headband tied around his neck. "I know, damn it. Just worry about running for our lives and getting away from those leaf ninjas." The two men kept running relentlessly, trying to put as much distance between them and Konoha as possible. After a bit, the brown-haired man slowed down till he was directly behind his teammate, opening up a pack he had on his back. He looked inside to make sure their package was intact. "I can't believe we are getting paid this much money to capture this. What do you think, Ryu?" The bald man named Ryu answered his teammate, "All I know is that the Tsuchikage better pay up. It's only natural that the Tsuchikage would want this kid. How much longer until we reach the checkpoint, Wataru?" Wataru zipped the pack back up and told Ryu, "We're supposed to meet a contact that will tell us where the IWA needs will be, and then there will be a trade-off. The town is called Mulan and we need to get there by tomorrow morning, so let's book it and get paid." Ryu agreed and they ran off faster than they were going before. The next day, Mulan town. It was about 8 o'clock in the morning when they first caught sight of the town, and they hadn't even rested once since they left Konoha. They looked for the contact at a casino called Royal Castle. The two were exhausted from their flight, but they henged into 2 travelers and made their way into the casino. Once inside, they desperately looked around for their contact. Ryu leaned to his partner asking him, "What does the contact look like?" Wataru answered, "He's from Takigakure, or rather he was. Apparently he is a mercenary taking any job that a ninja village wouldn't." Ryu said, "So we are looking for a waterfall headband, found him." Ryu pointed to a man sitting in the corner counting some chips on a table that was next to him. They took notice that his face was covered in a mask and a slash going through his headband. The most visible trait he had was his tan skin with stitchings covering his body like he was sewn together at the joints, and turquoise eyes with red where the white should be. The two men walked close to him and Wataru said, "May the glory of IWA stand tall." The Taki ninja looked up at the two men and said, "Follow me." The masked man stood up and the 2 disguised men followed him into the back room. They walked through all the workers that were in the back as security in case something went wrong in the casino. The 3 men entered into a secret room and began conducting business. The 2 Yugakure ninjas dropped their disguises. Ryu took his pack off and gently placed it on the table, telling the Taki ninja, "All right, here is the package. Now where is the money, mister?" The Rouge ninja told the 2, Kakuzu. He quickly snatched the pack off the table and unzipped it, looking into it, seeing something he wouldn't have guessed was the package. "This is the package?" Wataru answered, "It is. The Tsuchikage told us everything we needed about what we were to obtain. I'm just glad that the village was already under attack by the Kyuubi. We had used the distraction of the attack to sneak into the village and get it." Kakuzu reached his hand into the pack and pulled out a blanket that was wrapping something else up. He moved the blankets aside and saw the face of a baby, a blonde-haired baby that was sleeping peacefully. Ryu slammed his hand on the table shouting, "You got the kid, now give us the money." Kakuzu wrapped the baby back up in the blanket and placed him back into the pack gently. He placed the pack off to the side and told the 2, "The Tsuchikage told me that should you complete your mission, I am to give you your reward." Kakuzu reached under the table and pulled out a metal case and placed it on the table. He opened the case and said, "Here is your reward, 50 million ryo." Wataru reached ahead to make sure it was the right amount, but Kakuzu slammed the case shut on the man's fingers, making him wince in pain. Before Ryu could react, Kakuzu leapt over the table and punched him in the face, making the man's head knock against the wall, knocking him out. The nuke nin grabbed Wataru by the back of his neck and slammed his head into the table. Wataru shouted, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" The man simply answered, "That Tsuchikage won't care if the kidnappers he hired were killed by, let's say, Konoha's A and B unit. As long as he got his package, he shouldn't mind." The man widened his eyes in horror and Kakuzu pulled his head off the table only to snap his neck quickly. He snatched the retractable weapon from the dead man and drove it into Ryu's skull, keeping the man pinned to the wall. Kakuzu wiped the blood off of his hands using a piece of cloth from one of the dead ninjas. He picked up the money that spilled out of the case. After he picked up the money, he heard a crying sound. He looked around the table and saw that the pack was moving, and he knew the baby was awake now, no doubt from all the noise he made when he killed the men. Kakuzu grabbed the pack and opened it up. He needed to shut the kid up if he was to go, as it wouldn't do good if a Konoha Anbu ninja heard the crying and decided to check it out. Looking inside, he saw the baby crying his eyes out. He picked the kid up as if it were a foreign object and held the baby with his arms outstretched, not sure what to do next. All his years as a ninja didn't prepare him to take care of a baby. He had to move. If the baby continued to cry, surely someone would hear it and wanted to see what happened. And would see the bodies. He placed the baby back into the pack despite the constant crying and grabbing the metal case full of money. He did a few hand signs and slammed his hand on the ground, making a small hole just large enough for him to go through. He crawled through the tunnel and appeared out of the ground in a store that didn't seem to have anyone in it. Before anyone found him, he looked around for something that he could use to shut the baby up and found a bottle of milk. Taking it quickly, he left the store without anyone noticing him. 20 minutes later, Kakuzu was far outside the town of Mulan and took refuge in a cave. He had ripped a large cloth off of a traveler on the way there without them noticing and poured some of the milk onto it, soaking it completely. He placed the cloth in the baby's mouth, letting the baby suck out the milk from the cloth. When the baby opened his eyes, Kakuzu saw cerulean blue eyes that reminded him of someone, but couldn't think of who. He got curious and unraveled the baby and looked inside his diaper and said, "So you're a boy." The little baby boy stopped sucking, winced, making a strange face. Not knowing what to accept what he saw and heard about over the years, he sat the baby up on his knee and began to pat his back until the baby made a burping noise. Then he wrapped him back up and said, "Listen kid, I'm only taking care of you until I get you to the Tsuchikage. Don't take this the wrong way, I can't have you dying on me." He placed the baby back into his pack and picked up the money case as he set off to begin his journey to Iwagakure. The only bad thing was that the Tsuchikage had set up his meeting with the kidnappers in a town that was far east of Fire Country, which meant he had to travel across the land of fire and across Takigakure territory to Iwagakure to collect his reward. He felt the baby move in the pack and tried his best to ignore it, up until he began to cry. A day after the Kyubi attack, nightfall, Konoha. In Konoha, at the base of the mountain stood a tower belonging to the village's leader, a man called the Hokage. The village beyond it was in desperate need of repairs after a giant fox called the Kyubi attacked, causing massive earthquakes that destroyed a good deal of the village. Currently residing in the tower was a young man with spiky blonde hair. His hands buried in his face as he sat at a desk in the top floor of the tower. He wore standard jounin attire, a green combat vest jacket, and a blue long-sleeve ninja shirt with blue ninja pants. He was also wearing a white cloak that went over his attire with red flames along the bottom. This man looked to have seen better days, and his eyes showed that he had been doing a lot of crying. The door to his office swung open, revealing a young boy wearing a porcelain animal mask, standard uniforms consisting of black and gray armor, metal arm guards, and a signature spiral tattoo on his left shoulder. Though the animal mask of a dog covered his, one could still see his distinct gray hair that was defying gravity as it pointed from the left side of his head. The man politely bowed in front of the Hokage's desk, saying, "Still no sign of him, Hokage-sama. We don't even know where to start off. Most of the land and the village itself is greatly damaged, and it's near impossible to find out what direction the kidnappers might have gone." The man didn't even respond and seemed to be a statue. The boy moved a little closer, saying, "Sensei?" The Hokage took his hands away from his face, revealing cerulean blue eyes, tear marks making their way down his cheek. He looked at the body, asking, "Kakashi, you're sure you didn't find anything?" The young ninja named Kakashi shook his head. "No, sensei, nothing at all. All the available ANBU tracked looking for your son, but are coming up empty-handed." Young Kage leaned back in his chair and said, "Kushina is tearing herself up about this, and no matter what I do, she seems to get worse." Kakashi didn't know what to say. After everything that's happened, he was at a loss for words. Minato said again, "Nothing went how it was supposed to. Erasure wanted siblings, and he finally got not one, but two. He was even happier than both Kushina and me when he found out that Kushina was having twins." Kakashi took his mask off, showing his headband that had a leaf on it. That headband was slanted to cover his left eye. He placed his mask on the desk, saying, "With all due respect, nothing always goes as planned, not even for a Kage. We are ninjas after all, and nothing is set in stone for us." Before the Hokage could respond, his door opened up, and walking through it was a tall man with long spiky white hair, clad a long red vest, a green gi, a net shirt underneath that, red sandals, and a large scroll on his back. When the man saw who it was, he stood up, asking, "Jiraiya-sensei, did you find out anything?" The older man named Jiraiya shook his head. "Sorry Minato, I didn't, but I've only been to a few villages outlying Konoha a good distance away and found nothing. Whoever kidnapped your son may have gone off farther to avoid being seen, but to what village or town is unknown. Sorry, I couldn't find anything." The Hokage named Minato fell back into his chair, cursing under his breath. Jiraiya looked at Kakashi and then to his student walking over to him telling him, Minato, listen, I don't want to say this, but if your kid was kidnapped by one of your enemies, well then his chance of survival is 0. Minato looked up at his sensei and couldn't believe what he just said. Jiraiya saw his eyes and continued, Minato, you have to live in the reality of the world. Even if it wasn't one of your enemies and just a random kidnapper, then that doesn't make it any better. Kakashi walked up to his sensei as well. He's right, sensei. As much as the village would like to see the brighter side that we will find Naruto, they need to understand that that's not how the world works. Minato refused to believe any of what they were saying, but before he could say anything Jiraiya told him, listen Minato, you have a beautiful wife that needs you, your older boy Erasure needs you, and your daughter Haru will need you the most. She has the Kyuubi sealed inside of her, and she will need you to guide her and teach her how to control her power. Jiraiya's words sunk in a little and watched as he leaned back into his seat. Jiraiya ran his hand through his spiky hair saying, I suggest you let me take over as temporary Kage until you can get a handle on everything. Go home and rest, your family needs you. Minato stood up silently and walked out of the room, leaving the two ninjas in his office. Hokage Mansion. Minato walked to the most secure place in the village, the Hokage's mansion. It was a 2-story home with a large front and backyard and a very big training ground. He stopped in front of the huge gate and lazily opened the door, walking across the path to his home. Looking ahead, he saw a lot of toads, large, small, and some giant ones taller than himself. Each toad was croaking a sad melody, and their stone eyes watched him walk into his home. He dragged his feet across the ground and up the stairs slowly. After he got up the stairs, he stopped in front of a door with 2 names hanging on the door that read Haru and Naruto's room. He opened the door up and saw half the room was painted blue, and the other half was painted pink. The room had 2 cribs, 2 chairs, and 1 changing table that was on the farthest wall. Minato noticed that both cribs were empty and he left the room, closing the door behind him. He walked down the hall quietly, stopping outside the master bedroom. He moved to open the door, but it opened by itself, revealing a blonde-haired woman who looked to be in her 30s with fair skin, brown eyes, and a small violet diamond-shaped object on her forehead. Except for her bangs, which are parted in the middle and fall down the sides of her face, she has long blonde hair that was tied into 2 ponytails using bands in the same color as the seal on her forehead. She was wearing a grass-green robe with the kanji for gamble written in black on the back, inside a red circle. Underneath she wore khaki, kimono-style blouse with no sleeves, held closed by a broad dark bluish-gray obi that matches her trousers. Her blouse was cut quite low, revealing her sizable cleavage. And on her feet she wore open-toed sandals with low heels and nail polish in the same color as her trousers and obi on both her nails. The woman looked saddened and said, She needs you right now, Gaki. Minato nodded and said, Thank you, Tsunade Oba, I'll take it from here. The woman Tsunade moved to the side, letting him through, and she closed the door behind him. Minato walked into his dark room with the only light coming from the moon's rays outside his window. He looked at his king-sized bed and saw his wife sitting up on the bed. Their oldest son had his head on her lap, and she had her baby girl in her arms, rocking her back and forth, humming a soothing melody with a few sobs coming out of her mouth every now and then. Minato walked over to the bed, letting his cloak he had on fall to the floor. He sat on the bed and faced his wife, reaching out to move a few strands of her long red hair from her face and looking into her dark violet eyes. She looked up and saw Minato with a concerned look on his face. He asked his wife, How are you? His wife simply said, I want my son, I want my Naruto, where is he? Minato let his hand fall and he replied, Kushina, you need to rest. Kushina shook her head and said, I don't need rest, I need my son, where is he? Minato winced as she asked that and had no choice. Kushina-chan, they couldn't find any trace of where the kidnappers could have gone. With the Kyuubi attack, every shred of potential evidence might have been wiped away. He looked at the tiny baby in her arms and noted her appearance. The small baby girl had blonde hair and 3 whisker birthmarks on each cheek. He pulled the blanket off of her, looking at the seal on her belly. His wife held the baby closer to her chest, letting a few tears slide down her cheek. Minato got up and sat right next to her, pulling her into a hug, rubbing her head to try and soothe her. Erasure woke up at that point and sat up, looking at his parents. He saw how sad they were, asking his dad, Dad? Did they find Naruto yet? Minato looked at his son and pulled him into the hug as well. No, my son, they didn't find him yet, I don't think they will either. Erasure hugged his dad back and he could hear a sobbing sound coming from his father, but couldn't look up. He said to his parents, Mom, Dad, when I get older I'm gonna find Naruto, I promise I will. Minato smiled and he rubbed the top of his son's hair, telling him, Even if they don't find him, we shouldn't give up hope that he's out there somewhere, and if you say you'll find him, then you'll find him. Kushina heard what her oldest son said and felt more relieved by his words. She tried to hum the melody she was doing before to keep her baby Haru asleep. They all laid back down, believing that their baby Naruto was still alive somewhere. 3 days later, land of earth. Kakuzu was in no hurry to get to Iwagakure, as he was sure that Tsuchikage wouldn't be happy to see him after an unfortunate incident years ago. He stopped at a small restaurant for travelers and he took a seat. Ordering his food, he took the baby out of the pack and pulled out bottle filled with milk he got a while back. If he wanted the reward for this mission, then he needed to make sure the baby was well taken care of until he got to Iwagakure. One of the waitresses came over giving him a bowl of curry he ordered and saw the small baby in his arms, commenting on how cute the baby was. "Oh, he's so cute. What's the little one's name?" He stopped feeding the baby for a moment, and handed the baby to her, asking, "Hold him for a moment." The girl was confused but took the baby and watched as he turned his back to her and began to eat. She sat down and unraveled the baby from his blanket and inspected him, finding a band on his little ankle. She said out loud, "So your name is Naruto Namikaze, is it? That's a cute name." At that moment Kakuzu froze and put his bowl down and turned to the woman taking the baby. He quickly pulled out some money and slammed it on the table before taking his leave. He was in such a hurry that he left his pack and a few other things back at the restaurant. He began to run, all the while thinking, that fucking idiot. He had those two ninjas kidnap the Yondaime Hokage's son. How did I not see it? The blonde hair, the blue eyes, and now that fucking name. Kakuzu picked up the pace, running even more quickly. He glanced down at the baby and saw that his eyes were open and staring right at him, still giggling. He said to the baby, "Don't give me that look. I have to get you to IWA now." Naruto began to giggle and held his arms out to Kakuzu, but the ninja tried to ignore him and kept running, wanting to get this over with now. Iwagakure. The rocky mountain ranges that surround the village and country make it a natural stronghold. The village profits from this advantageous position and is proud of its strong defenses. The village itself sits among a mountain range consisting of small narrow waterfalls, made of buildings composed of rock and stone, shaped from large, elevated formations of rock into tower-like structures. Many of its buildings sit on cliffs and are connected by a network of bridges. The Tsuchikage's palace seems to be the tallest structure with a cone-shaped roof. Though for Kakuzu that made it more difficult, as getting through these mountains was no cakewalk. He reached up and took off the metal plate of his headband and buried it. Reaching into his ninja pouch, he took out a scroll that had the IWA symbol on it, 2 rocks with the smaller rock in front of the bigger rock. Setting his other weapons on the ground where his headband plate was, he kept the baby cradled in his arm and slowly walked to the entrance of the village. When he got close to the gate, he found himself surrounded by 10 IWA ninjas. One of the IWA nins asked, "What business do you have here, stranger?" Kakuzu had Naruto cradled in his right arm, and used his left hand to hold out the scroll to the ninja. The man carefully took hold of the scroll. Unraveling it, he read its contents, and then closed it up. He told Kakuzu, "This way." Kakuzu followed the man across a bridge to the Tsuchikage's tower. They entered the tower and came to a stop at what he assumed was the Tsuchikage's door. The IWA nin knocked on the door and heard a deep voice say, "Come in, come in." The ninja pushed the doors aside and walked in with Kakuzu following behind him. Kakuzu noticed 2 other men in the room that took their leave when his group entered. He saw that both had strong chakra signatures and noted each of them. The first was an older man wearing a large headpiece consisting of a 3-pointed crown-like ridge, bearing both his Iwagakure forehead protector and ring, along with a prominent black piece of armor running across his cheeks and the bridge of his nose. Despite his advanced age, his hair was a solid red color. The second was a very tall man that was heavily armored with a furnace on the back that emitted what looks to be steam. His armor extends all the way to the bottom half of his face, covering it completely. Aside from his red armor, he also wears a red kasa, conical straw hat, that seemed to be composed of metal. Over his armor he wore a black gi with the sleeves torn off. Kakuzu looked at the desk and saw a very short man as small as a child. His facial features included a triangular beard and a mustache with angular corners. He had a big red nose and thick eyebrows. The top of his head was completely bald, although he had some white hair at the back and sides of his head, the back of which is tied with a yellow ribbon into a ponytail. The old man told the 3 IWA nins in the room, "You may take your leave." All 3 men nodded and walked out. However, the Tsuchikage told the 2 other ninjas, "Rashi Han." Both men stopped at the door and looked at the Tsuchikage. The old Kage told them, "Remember who you serve." Both men nodded and left the room, closing the door behind them. Kakuzu saw out of the corner of his eye an IWA ANBU ninja came out of the wall using a jutsu the IWA nins are famous for. Kakuzu handed the kid over to the ANBU and he took the baby, who began to cry the moment he left Kakuzu's arms, over to the Tsuchikage. The ANBU ninja placed the baby on the Kage's desk and moved away as the Tsuchikage investigated the baby, checking him over twice to be sure, and then even a 3rd time. After he was done, he sighed, saying to Kakuzu, "Tell me that you have a powerful genjutsu over this baby, and that you can dispel it right now." Kakuzu didn't understand, asking, What the hell are you talking about? The Tsuchikage grabbed the baby by the blanket he was wrapped up in and tossed him at Kakuzu. Kakuzu reacted by instinct and grabbed the baby. Despite being thrown, the baby stopped crying and started to smile when he was with Kakuzu. The Tsuchikage said in a low tone, I paid 50 million ryo to have the baby of the Yondaime Hokage brought to me, the baby that has the nine-tailed demon fox sealed in it. Do you know how difficult it was to get information like that? Do you know how much careful planning it took to make sure that the package containing the QB would be delivered to me? That's what I wanted, and yet this baby has neither the seal on his body nor any characteristics that he has the beast in him. Kakuzu made his voice low as well, arguing back. My job was to bring the baby to you. It was those two incompetent ninjas you hired who failed you. Don't make this like I failed the mission, Inoki. The Tsuchikage Inoki shook his head, telling Kakuzu, I cannot let this go unpunished. I will kill you and the baby of that bastard as well. I can't have you going around letting rumors spread that I authorized the mission to kidnap the Yondaime's baby. That would turn out very, very bad for me. Inoki held his hand up to his ANBU, saying, Kill him. The ANBU ninja hopped into action quickly, charging at Kakuzu. The Nuke Nin, however, wasn't intimidated and opened up a wound in his arm, pulling out an explosive tag. The next thing the village heard was a loud explosion that came from their Kage's tower. Kakuzu jumped out of the building at blinding speed and kept running, going faster than he'd ever run before, still carrying the baby. He was lucky he avoided any ninjas and ran to where he left his weapons. He found the spot where he left everything and jetted off once he got what he needed. He had to get out of IWA now. The back of his shirt began to move around and thread-like wings ripped through the back of the that he used to fly at amazing speeds, putting as much distance between him and IWA as possible. 2 hours later, Takigakure. Kakuzu made it back to Taki territory without stopping and took a moment to rest after his ordeal with the Tsuchikage. He set Naruto down on the ground, still wrapped in his blanket, as he said to himself, I'm screwed, the Tsuchikage is after me, my village wants me dead, I have the son of the Yondaime Hokage with me, fuck, I can't keep this kid with me. He looked around and made a kind of small boat out of twigs and some of his threads coming from his body. He placed the boat next to a stream with the baby on it. He lifted up the boat and baby and held it in the stream, ready to send the baby off. Little Naruto opened his eyes and looked into Kakuzu's eyes, almost as if pleading him not to do it. Kakuzu began to have a struggle within himself, saying, if they connect me with your kidnapping, then Konoha will be after me quick, but what if they catch me without you? After he thought over a few different scenarios, he grabbed Naruto and said, You're a nuisance, but I could use you. He got up and walked away. He looked at the baby cradled in his arm and watched in amusement as the baby kept giggling and smiling. Kakuzu kept walking through a forest, saying, The moment you start to walk, little Naruto, you're gonna begin your training. And whether you like it or not, and it will not be a cakewalk. Kakuzu moved through the forest, taking on a student he intends to protect himself. 8 years later, Land of Tea. The streets were paved in bright colors and everyone was out having fun for the festival. Kids played in the streets, wearing plastic ANBU masks. Countless carnival stalls were open with prizes of all shapes and sizes to entice people to come and play. Yes, everyone was having fun at the festival, everyone except 2 people walking through the crowd, completely disinterested in the festival that was going on around them. One was very short, 4 feet 2 inches, the average height for a child his age, while the other was a tall man who stood at 6 feet 0 inches. Both were wearing similar black cloaks with high collars and white hooded masks with black face guards that obscured everything but their eyes. The child's eyes were a cerulean blue, but the man had odd turquoise pupils and red sclera. The taller man told his younger companion, Naruto, you remember what you're supposed to do, right? The boy named Naruto nodded in response, looking at the taller man. Don't worry, Tusen, I remember. Naruto stopped and waited as his dad continued walking forward. You all know it's Kakuzu, right? Kakuzu walked down an alleyway to a door that led to a brothel. Once inside, he saw that this place was more of an underground cave than a building, unlike the ones famous in other countries. He was greeted by a woman wearing a brown kimono that showed off her cleavage, obviously standing there to warm up new customers. Hello there, master. What can I interest you in? She asked breathily. But Kakuzu couldn't care less about her attempts to seduce him. Kakuzu asked the woman, Has an overweight man come in here? He's a friend of mine and I have important business to conclude with him. The woman sighed that he wasn't there for a good time, but showed him through a few hallways. Kakuzu could hear pants, moans, and screams coming from many of the closed doors, but ignored them completely. He'd heard worse. Soon they reached room 21 foot. She held her hand to the door, saying, He's in here. Kakuzu immediately looked at her and widened his eyes. She inhaled once sharply before passing out under his genjutsu. He caught her and placed her sitting up on the wall. He turned his attention back to the door. He could hear a few screams coming from in the room, but he kicked down the door anyway, knocking the door off of its hinges. The occupants of the room froze when the door flew past. The man got off from on top of the woman he paid and tried to get dressed, cursing and screaming at Kakuzu all the while. Kakuzu ignored all his rants and screams, and continuing to watch him passively. Finally the man was able to get a shirt and his pants on, asking, "Who the fuck are you?" Kakuzu moved a few steps toward him as he said, "Kaijiro Yamura, your company sees you as a bother and dead weight, so they hired me to kill you. Think of me as your hitman." Kaijiro immediately grabbed the prostitute and tossed her at him. Kakuzu didn't care and kicked the woman, knocking her into the wall, unconscious. Kaijiro was already running from the room, thinking he got a good head start from his hitman. But that's what Kakuzu allowed. Kakuzu left the room and began walking, following leisurely behind the man. Kaijiro busted through a door leading into the building, knocking a kid over as he ran into the alleyway. He took off down the alley, running through so many different twists and turns that he lost track of where he was. He started hitting a few dead ends, forcing him to backtrack. But soon the dead ends became more frequent. He kept running frantically from dead end to dead end until he turned one corner and came to a stop facing a wall. He turned around to backtrack only to find that the way he came through was gone and he was trapped. He began to pound on the walls and search for a way out, but to no success. Atop the roof sat Naruto watching the man panic in a crowded street. Kakuzu appeared next to Naruto saying, "You've improved in your genjutsu at least. Though I suggest you don't use them when fighting against the real ninja." Naruto agreed and was amazed that he casted such an easy genjutsu on a man like him. An academy student would be able to sense this type of genjutsu. Naruto replied, "You should catch him now, Dad, before the samurai in the area try and arrest him too, San." Kakuzu watched a little while longer as the man continued to run into people, knocking a few of them over, thinking he was trapped. 6 samurais soon came over to check out the commotion and saw a fat man going crazy in the middle of this happy festival. The leader of the samurai squad shouted, "Cease and desist. You are under arrest." Naruto dropped the genjutsu at that moment, and Kaijiro looked around and saw he was surrounded by samurais and a few onlookers. He didn't understand what was going on. He froze, however, when he heard a voice behind him. "Got you." He turned around and saw Kakuzu, who snatched him up quick. The samurais saw a man appear behind the one they were arresting, but before they could act, both men disappeared. The samurais started to search the area for the 2 people they thought they had cornered. A few miles away from the festival, Kakuzu tossed the unconscious fat man into a tree as Naruto landed next to him, a bit slower than his father but still able to keep up. Kakuzu opened his cloak, taking out a meat cleaver, and he handed it over to Naruto saying, "We need his head. We are to take it back to the client as proof." Naruto took the cleaver without arguing in the least. In one swift move he sliced the man's head clean off. Naruto opened his cloak and pulled out a small sack that he placed the head in. He moved away from the now headless corpse and watched as Kakuzu rolled out a scroll and unsealing its contents. Inside it were a number of various tools, chemicals. Naruto strapped the sack around his back and pulled out a scroll, handing it over to Kakuzu, who unraveled it and placed it next to him. Disconnectedly, as if he was butchering a pig instead of a human being, Kakuzu cut the fat man open, removing a few organs to place them on the scroll. After he was done, he grabbed a vial of acid and sprinkled it on the body. Naruto immediately stepped back and watched as Kakuzu pulled out a match and lit tossing it on the corpse. The body ignited immediately because of the acid. Naruto walked over to the organs, sealed them inside the scroll. He quickly handed the scroll to Kakuzu, asking, "After we deliver the head, are we going to the black market?" Kakuzu took the scroll and put it inside his cloak, answering Naruto, "Yes, we are. That way we have some pocket change. Now let's go. We don't want that head to start rotting now, do we?" Naruto shook his head and followed after Kakuzu. Kakuzu looked down at Naruto and was amazed at his progress thus far. Naruto had stopped showing emotion early on and was almost impossible to catch off guard. He knows that Naruto is motivated when it comes to impressing him. The kid doesn't show facial expressions to anyone but Kakuzu, and the only one he makes is a smile that he gives Kakuzu when he's praised. All in all, Naruto was an A and B in terms of emotions, but he still had a long way to go in his training. He took Naruto out and let him kill his first human to get him ready for what's ahead. He had killed a man whose wife had hired them to kill so she could collect on his life insurance. Naruto took the man by surprise and had stabbed him through his throat. When Kakuzu told him he did a good job, Naruto smiled happily at Kakuzu's praise. Any other time, however, he just looks like he's unmotivated. But that was because he believes he only needed to impress and be active around Kakuzu, the man whom he's taken to calling father. Konohagakure. Konoha remained a happy, peaceful village even after the Kyuubi attack 8 years ago. When word spread around the village that the Sandaime Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, sacrificed himself to seal the monster inside the Yondaime Hokage's daughter in order to protect their village. Some looked at Haru Namikaze as the savior of Konoha, while others saw her as demon. However, the respect and all the villagers felt for the Yondaime Hokage and his sealing abilities soon overrode that fear. A statue of the third Kage when he was in his prime was made and set up in the center of Konoha's park, a place everyone visited to pay their respects to their old Kage. At the academy, students were just being released out of their classes, running around with the excitement that comes with getting out of school. One little girl named Haru came out of the building. She had long blonde hair the color of beaten gold tied into a braid, whisker birthmarks on her cheeks, and cerulean blue eyes that look as pure and clear as a cloudless sky. She wore a blue shirt and long shorts that almost went past her knees. The little girl rushed out of the door and stopped, waiting for her friends to come out. She didn't wait long as 3 girls ran out of the academy building heading straight for her. One of the girls had shoulder-length pink hair that was tied in a red ribbon and emerald green eyes. She was wearing a darker shade of blue for a shirt and light tan shorts. The second girl had platinum blonde hair that was shoulder-length, blue eyes, 2 ring necklaces, a peach-colored shirt, and black pants. Finally, the third girl had dark blue hair in a Heimcut style, with chin-length strands framing her face. Her eyes were pupils, the irises nearly as white as the scara, with a slight tinge of lavender. Unlike the other 3 girls, she wore an expensive beige-color kimono. The 3 girls caught up with their blonde friend, following her away from the school grounds. The little pink-haired girl asked her friends, "You guys want to come over to my house?" First to respond was the platinum blonde-haired girl, "Sorry, Sakura, but my mother wants me to help around the shop a little more." Haru nodded in reply, "Sorry, I can't come over either. My brother is supposed to be returning from a mission today, and I wanted to go see him." The white-eyed girl told Sakura, "I'll come over. Tusan is away on a business trip with my uncle and they won't be back for some time." "Thanks, Hinata," Sakura said, smiling. Ino's side man Haru, Hinata, and Sasuke-kun all have siblings. "It'd be nice if I had a little sister," she pouted. Haru told Ino, "It's good, I guess, but Oni-san doesn't have time to hang out. When he is home and not on missions, he's always training at the Hokage's training grounds." Hinata nodded, adding, "Hanabi is still too young to really say anything yet. She's only 3 years old right now." Sakura said, "Still, I agree with Ino, it would be nice to have a little brother or sister." The 4 continued walking, talking with each other for a while before they split up to go their separate ways. Haru started running to the Hokage Tower to go see her dad. Hopefully her brother Erasure would be there as well. She made the final turn around the corner, and she ran into someone. She fell back with a grunt and quickly looked up to apologize. "I'm so sorry, I wasn't looking where I was going." She stopped when she realized she ran into Sasuke Uchiha. Sasuke had raven black hair that spiked out in the back, black eyes, a long-sleeved blue shirt with a fan symbol on the back, and white pants. The youngest son of Fugaku and Mikoto Uchiha, he was Itachi Uchiha's little brother. It was known around the village that Erasure Namikaze and Itachi Uchiha were rivals ever since they graduated from the academy the same year, both of them being only 7 years old. But Itachi came out as number 1, something her brother didn't bother to worry about. Both got promoted to Chunin at 10 years old. The only difference between the two was Itachi accepted his promotion to ANBU captain at 13, whereas her brother chose to become a Jounin instead. The two remained as close friends and rivals. Even after Itachi became ANBU, he always sought out Erasure to have a battle with. Itachi had dark gray eyes along with black hair that hung near his cheeks to frame his face. He wore his hair in a long ponytail because his hair had a softer flow to it, lacking the spiky style at the back. His skin was also slightly darker. Though, Itachi's most distinguishing characteristics were the long pronounced creases under his eyes. Currently he was wearing his casual clothes, which were a black shirt, with the Uchiha symbol embroidered on the back, and black pants. Sasuke picked himself up and shouted, "Watch where you're going." Haru stood up and stared him down, shouting back, "Big talk for a shorty like you." Anime-style lighting shot out of their eyes, connecting as the two continued to argue with one another. Sasuke stopped arguing when he felt someone place a hand on his shoulder. He turned around and saw his older brother Itachi smiling at him, saying, "Sasuke-kun, that's no way to talk to a friend, is it?" Sasuke looked down and Itachi looked at Haru. "Sorry for my little brother. Where are you off to, Haru-chan?" Haru blushed a deep shade of red before answering him with a worse stutter than Hinata. "Wwwl, I am Gigi, going to my DD dad's office to SSSC my brother." Itachi chuckled at the little girl, knowing full well that the Hokage's daughter had a crush on him. "Mind if I join?" he asked Haru. "It's been a while since I last saw Erasure." Haru was still fashioning a blush, but nodded quickly. Itachi looked at his little brother, asking him, "Do you want to tag along too, Sasuke-kun?" Sasuke looked at his brother, nodding meekly. The three walked to the Hokage's tower with Haru and Itachi talking the whole time. When they reached the Hokage's secretary's desk, Haru told her that she was there to see her father. Haru, Itachi, and Sasuke reached the Hokage's office and Haru opened the door without knocking, something her father was used to. She dashed inside and stopped as soon as she opened the door and saw her father at his desk wearing his cloak that she's almost always seen him in. Her eyes glanced to the only other in the room who had long, wild, spiky blonde hair with some of it kept in a low ponytail. He was wearing the traditional ninja vest and the blue ninja clothes. Haru immediately ran to him shouting, "Arashio Naikin! You're home!" She grabbed onto him, hugging him tightly. Minato laughed at the scene in front of him. Erasure kneeled down to look his sister in the eyes and said, "It's good to see you, Haruheim." Haru laughed every time he called her that. Erasure looked up and saw Itachi and Sasuke walk into the room. He greeted both, "Hello there, Itachi-san, Sasuke-kun." Minato also greeted them all as well. Itachi bowed to them saying, "Good evening, Arashi-san, Hokage-sama." Sasuke mimicked his brother, greeting both Minato and Erasure exactly the same way Itachi did. "Haru, sweetie, do you mind taking Sasuke out into the lobby?" Minato asked his daughter. "Daddy has to talk with Erasure for a moment." Haru was about to pout, but Erasure said to her, "Don't worry, Aniki will be here when you get back." Haru sadly agreed and walked out of the room. Itachi nudged Sasuke, prompting him to follow her. Like Haru, Sasuke walked out dejectedly, wanting to hang out with his brother longer. Itachi closed the door after they left and walked over to his rival, standing next to him as Minato went over his son's mission report. He leaned back in his chair after reading his son's report and said, "Another lead that turned out to be a dead end." Erasure looked down apologetically. "I thought that this would be the one too, but it turns out the last time anyone saw the kid was 2 years ago. It's possible that it was Naruto, but I just don't know. Sorry, Dad." Minato immediately said to his son, "Don't apologize for this. If this child really was Naruto, then there is a chance that he's still out there." They didn't mind talking about this in front of Itachi, since this kind of information was common. Naruto's kidnapping was common knowledge to everyone in Konoha. There were rumors everywhere that some would see a spiky-haired blonde boy whenever someone left the village for a vacation or something else. Itachi had pitched in, and when he finished his missions early, he would ask around looking for the Namikaze's missing child. Minato put the paperwork in his desk. "We're getting close though," he told his son. "I feel it. For now though, go home and get some rest. Tell your mother I'll be home later and that I don't have to work late tonight." Itachi and Erasure both bowed politely to the Hokage as they left his office. Itachi walked beside his rival before he asked, "8 years, huh?" Erasure nodded. "Yeah, 8 years since my baby brother was kidnapped from Konoha's hospital." He replied, "My mother blames herself because she said she left the room he was in for a moment to go see if Haru was okay, and the nurses said they watch him." Erasure stopped walking and Itachi stopped as well and looked at him as he continued. "When Mom and Dad got back to the room to see Naruto, the nurses had been killed and Naruto was nowhere to be seen. Mom keeps saying had she stayed in the room she would have been able to fight off whoever it was who took Naruto." Itachi didn't really know what to do to really comfort someone, so the only thing he could say was, "Don't worry, Erasure, you'll find him." Though Erasure didn't feel any better, he put on a brave face and went to fetch his sister so they could head home. Hokage Mansion. Haru burst through the Kage mansion heading straight for the kitchen, followed by her brother. Haru reached the kitchen and saw her mother chopping up some vegetables for dinner. "Hi, Ka-san," said Haru excitedly. Kushina turned around and saw her daughter. Putting the knife down, she kneeled to give her daughter a hug. "How was your classes today?" Kushina asked. Haru gave her mother a great big smile, telling her, "I did great. Our teacher is Iruka Yumino is teaching us what to look for in the field to eat when we run out of supplies." Kushina said, "That's great, I can't believe you're already at the academy. Before long you'll be a Konoha ninja just like your brother." Haru blushed and smiled at her mother's remark. Erasure sat down at the kitchen table and decided to tease his little sister. "That's the second time you blushed today, isn't it, Haruheim?" Haru turned to look at her brother, shouting, "Nah." "So Itachi was lying when he saw you blush earlier?" Erasure asked. Kushina started to laugh that her daughter already had a crush and it was the future clan head of the Uchiha clan. Kushina told her daughter, "Haru-chan, why don't you go upstairs and go wash up?" Haru didn't argue and darted off up to her room, leaving Kushina and her oldest child. Erasure knew what was coming. Every time he went on a mission that had to do with Naruto, she just needed to know. Kushina sat down at the table next to her son, no longer carrying her smile, and asked him, "What did you find?" Erasure tapped his fingers on the table while telling his mother, "Nothing. Turns out whoever that village saw who resembled Naruto was 2 years ago. There is a chance it was him, but there is another chance it is a kid who looks like Naruto. He hated to give his mother bad news, but it was better than getting her hopes too high up. Arisher got up to leave, but told his mom, "I'm gonna find him. I'm not gonna stop till I find him." He started to walk away saying one last thing: "Dad doesn't have to work late tonight, and he said he'll be home when he can." Kushina watched him leave. Over the years she holds the thought that Naruto is alive and well somewhere out there. That thought kept her from doing anything drastic and life-risking. She got up from the table and continued making dinner for her family, occasionally looking out of the kitchen window watching the sunset. "Naruto, where are you, my son?" "Somewhere in Fire Country." Naruto was sitting outside a big building in a town as he waited for Kakuzu to conclude his business with the men inside. He watched as people walked past him, some alone, some holding the hands of young children. For some reason the ones with the children seemed happier. Naruto didn't understand what could make someone so happy to hold their kid's hand like that when they see them every day. Kakuzu would buy him scrolls and books to have him read a lot as part of his training. He said it was so he would be smarter than most ninjas, and had even given Naruto ones on human emotions. Yet even after reading them he still didn't understand. He didn't get what love was, friendship, or many other emotions people express to one another. He only truly understood acceptance, like he accepted the fact he's a trained criminal, he's accepted that he's killed, but he likes when Kakuzu accepts him for who he is and expresses gratitude toward him. That was all Naruto knew, and that was all he cared to know. Kakuzu was currently counting a case of money, payment for taking care of Kajiro. The man's head was currently sitting on the center of the table for the clients to see. One of the men asked Kakuzu, "Thank you for your services, but might we ask you for a tiny favor?" Kakuzu finished counting the money in the case. Closing it, he looked at the man asking for a favor. "Is it too much trouble, or could you please dispose of this thing?" he asked, referring to the man's head. Kakuzu headed for the door saying, "Yes, it is too much trouble," and left the room. As he exited the building he saw Naruto sitting right where he'd left him. Walking up behind Naruto he lightly tapped him with his foot. Naruto looked up and saw Kakuzu was ready to go. He stood up and followed him. As they walked out of the village, Kakuzu told Naruto, "When we get deeper into the mountains we will improve your taijutsu. You will attack me with the intent to kill, or will not improve." "Hi to-san," Naruto replied. 1 hour and 30 minutes later. Kakuzu held an unopened cup of ramen in one hand while he used the other to effortlessly block Naruto's kicks and punches. Naruto was giving it his all as he attacked Kakuzu, intent on claiming his prize. The deal was if Naruto could successfully land a hit on Kakuzu, then he got to eat his favorite food, ramen. If he lost, then he would have to go out into the forest to catch his food while Kakuzu ate the ramen. Naruto tried to knee Kakuzu in the head, but the Nukenin grabbed his knee to block. While he was holding Naruto in the air, Naruto tried to punch Kakuzu in the head, but Kakuzu easily tossed Naruto to the ground. Quick to recover, Naruto pulled out a kunai and tried to slash Kakuzu. Naruto was ambidextrous, able to switch his kunai from hand to hand with little loss of skill. Kakuzu taught him this to better his weapon handling skills, tossed hot coals at his feet to teach him footwork, and kept him training at high altitudes for his stamina and endurance. Naruto was extremely resilient, and never gave up so far. Something that impressed Kakuzu so much that he could say he was proud of the young blonde. The little ninja held the kunai in his right hand and tried to stab Kakuzu, but the masked ninja grabbed Naruto's wrist, stopping him. Immediately Naruto dropped the kunai and caught it with his left hand, slashing at Kakuzu again. Kakuzu was quicker, releasing him, and Naruto missed Kakuzu's arm. Letting out a hiss of annoyance, Naruto kept attacking, switching up his tactics. He was suddenly stopped when Kakuzu held his hand. Time was up. Kakuzu pointed to the forest saying, "You know what to do." Naruto nodded and headed into the forest to hunt for his dinner tonight. He watched the little 8-year-old head off into the forest, kunai in hand. Kakuzu sat down next to a tree where he set down his briefcase full of money, starting a campfire so they would be ready to eat dinner later. He put the cup of ramen away for next time he trained Naruto. He always used the ramen trick Naruto's training ever since he treated Naruto to some a long time ago and learned of the boy's near addiction to the stuff. He leaned back and patiently waited for Naruto to return. About an hour later Naruto returned carrying 2 dead rabbits and a few berries he found in the woods. Naruto began to skin the rabbits, carving a few sticks clean to spit the skinned rabbits on for cooking. Naruto placed them next to the fire and kept an eye on them so they didn't burn. After they were done he grabbed one of the rabbits and gave it to Kakuzu. After he gave Kakuzu his food, Naruto grabbed his and the two removed the bottom half of their masks to start eating. Naruto asked Kakuzu, "So where to next to-san?" Kakuzu took a big bite out of his rabbit despite the threads on the sides of his mouth while answering him. "We're heading to the land of bears, to a little ninja village called Hashigakure. A man from that village named Akahoshi wants me to help him kill their sandame Hashikage." Naruto was a little stunned that Kakuzu wanted to accept a mission like that. He voiced his concerns. Though I think it wouldn't be a good idea to kill a Kage, but I never heard of a Hashikage. Kakuzu told him, truth is no one really has. The other 5 great countries do not see this village as a worthy to take the name Kage nor become a great nation, but they still decided to call the village leader Kage instead of chief. I don't know any ninja from that village that would even be worthy of the title Kage. It's a joke really. So if this is an assassination mission from that village, then wouldn't they realize who helped kill their leader, as that would cast suspicion on them as well? Asked Naruto. Kakuzu nodded, saying to Naruto, your part in this mission is to set up exploding tags around the base of the Kage's tower, and bury him once I'm done. I'll give you the exploding tags and tell you where to place them exactly. Naruto agreed and pulled out his canteen to take a drink of water, but Kakuzu took it and took a swig first, drinking the whole content. He got up and told Naruto, I'll get you some more, so stay here. Naruto nodded and continued eating his cooked rabbit. Kakuzu found a stream and filled the canteen full of water. Once he filled it up, he pulled a scroll out of his pack, unraveling it and unsealing its contents. Popping out of the scroll was a clear gourd that had water inside of it. Next to the gourd was a hay straw. He put it inside the gourd. Pulling it out, he held it over Naruto's canteen and waited for a drop to fall into it. Once it did, he quickly pulled the straw away and put it next to the gourd, sealing both inside the scroll once again. Kakuzu capped Naruto's canteen and shook it around a bit, thinking, those idiots I stole this from used this to the point of them shorting their life so much they died 2 seconds later. He walked back to where Naruto was and tossed him his canteen. Naruto grabbed the canteen and took a drink since he was really thirsty after his short skirmish with Kakuzu and the task of hunting rabbits. After both finished eating the rabbits and the berries, Naruto laid his head down on his cloak and fell asleep. Kakuzu leaned up against the tree and fell asleep too, but kept himself well aware of his surroundings. Morning. The 2 ninjas woke up early around 5 o'clock in the morning. Both of them put on their cloaks, Kakuzu grabbed his briefcase, and they headed out to Bear Country for the assassination assignment. They walked on a main path for a good 3 hours, passing a farm along the way. Kakuzu noticed some straw laying around and he decided they should relax there for a moment, and make some straw hats in case it rained along the way. Naruto didn't know how to make one, so he watched Kakuzu make his. Afterwards he quickly caught on and mimicked how he made his. After they finished making their straw hats, Kakuzu held out his hand and a thread came out looping inside the straw hat, making a string so you could hang the hat around your neck. He did the same for Naruto's and soon they were off. Kakuzu let his hang around his neck while Naruto decided to put his hat on. They continued through Fire Country at a kind of slow pace due to all the stops. Apparently there was a ninja going around coning travelers, and ninjas around the area were just inspecting and talking to a few people. Thankfully Kakuzu and Naruto were able to avoid the ninjas, but they had to take the long ways around. Soon they found themselves the only ones on the current path. Kakuzu noticed ahead of them coming in their direction was a 4-man ninja squad from Konoha. One of the ninjas both Naruto and Kakuzu both recognized. The one leading the group was wearing a jounin vest, but a tattered and torn brown vest rested on top of that one. He also wore a fishnet shirt under, black ninja pants, and black forearm guards. His appearance was somewhat intimidating, a few battle scars on his face, a small black beard, and black hair tied in a high spiky ponytail. If it was one thing Kakuzu taught Naruto, it was to recognize ninjas from as many villages as possible and the reputations behind them. To give Naruto a better view of each ninja he knows and seen, he would transform into them and have the boy memorize them. The 4-man team got closer and Kakuzu thought, Shikaku Nara, clan head of the Nara. Kakuzu kept walking, hoping to avoid confrontation with this man. Naruto was a bit nervous since Kakuzu had told him to avoid any and all Konoha ninja no matter what. Of course he never told him why, but Naruto didn't wish to ask. The gap between the two groups grew smaller and smaller until they passed each other, either groups saying anything to one another. Kakuzu thought they were in the clear, but stopped when he heard, "Hold it right there." Both Naruto and Kakuzu stopped and turned around slowly. They saw Shikaku was looking right at Kakuzu. Feeling uneasy, Kakuzu started to unravel the threads in his arm just in case. Shikaku couldn't see this since his cloak was covering up his arm. Shikaku walked up to Kakuzu, leaving a good arm distance between them. He asked Kakuzu, "Do you know anything about a con artist going around passing himself off as a healer? He's been coning travelers and we've been getting a lot of reports along this area." Kakuzu didn't stop unraveling the threads in his arms, slowly answering, "No, I'm afraid I haven't. My son and I are just passing through, trying to get home after a long vacation. My wife is expecting the both of us home soon." Shikaku looked at Kakuzu's mask and saw stitched in the forehead part of the hood was the metal plate for the headband with the Takigakure symbol in it. He decided to comment on the fact that he had a slash going through his headband. Usually that slash marking means for Nuke means that they defected from their village. Naruto moved next to Kakuzu and started pulling on his arm cloak. Kakuzu didn't look at Naruto but easily came up with something. I received the mark in a fight with a Kumo ninja. Now if you don't mind, you're making my son nervous and I would like to leave. If I was a Nukenin, I wouldn't be traveling with my son. That would put him in danger, so if you'll excuse me, I need to get my son home. Shikaka kept his eyes glued on the man. Sorry for keeping you. Shikaka turned around and his team joined him, walking off quickly. Kakuzu told Naruto, let's go. Naruto didn't let go of Kakuzu's sleeve and followed him. Konoha. Minato was taking a stroll through the village with his wife Kushina on his arm. They usually took walks like this together in the mornings just so they could get out. Haru was at the academy and Erasure was out and about meeting up with his old teammates, even though he didn't know them very long. They walked around until Kushina said, I'm a little hungry, how about we eat at Ichiraku's? Minato, being an intelligent man, wasn't one to argue when it came to her and ramen. Okay, let's go. He agreed and led her to the ramen bar. It was a small shack restaurant with only 6 bar stools. Kushina moved the curtains out of the way, allowing her and Minato to walk through. Hello, Tuchi-san. Kushina greeted. An old man in his early 40s looked up from making ramen and saw Kushina and Minato. Oh, hello there, Kushina-sama, Hokage-sama. Kushina giggled, telling him, I told you already, Tuchi-san, just call me Kushina, you don't need the sama. Minato said to the old restaurant owner, she wanted ramen again. So let's just have the usual salt ramen and I'll just have the beef ramen. Coming right up, Tuchi said with a smile. Kushina looked around and asked, where's Ayam at? Tuchi responded while making the ramen, oh, I sent her to the market to get some more ingredients and other groceries. She just left, so she won't be back for a while. After a while the ramen was done and he served it to his 2 customers. Both Kushina and Minato said in unison, Itadakimasu, and they both dug in. As they ate, they noticed someone else enter the restaurant. Minato greeted him first, hey there, Kakashi. Kakashi was wearing the standard Jounin outfit instead of his ANBU armor. Hello sensei, Kushina-san. Kushina also greeted Kakashi, good morning Kakashi. How have you been? Kakashi shrugged his shoulders, I've been okay. I saw you and sensei here and thought I'd drop in to say hi. That's nice of you, Kakashi, said Minato. The 3 got caught up, talking about things that happened recently, including Haru's advancement in her classes. But her only trouble was she can't get the clone technique down. Tuchi walked in the back to put some things away, leaving the 3 to talk. Kushina finished her ramen and just sat there looking at her empty bowl. Minato looked over at her and saw her saddened face, asking, what's wrong? Kushina sighed, asking, do you think Naruto would have liked ramen? Minato smiled, saying, I'm sure he would, after all you, Erasure, and Haru would kill someone for some ramen. He's probably out there right now having himself a bowl of some ramen as we speak, Kakashi added. Kushina brightened up and said, yeah? Well, I'm gonna go back home and clean up a little. Minato stood up, setting the money for their meal on the counter, saying to Kakashi, I'll see you later, Kakashi. Kakashi nodded to his sensei and watched the couple leave. Minato decided to walk his wife home before he went back to his office. Next day, Land of Bears. Naruto and Kakuzu were waiting at the meeting point for the one hiring Kakuzu for this job. It was raining and both of them had on their straw hats on. Naruto had drawn a target board on a tree, was throwing a few of his shurikens at the target to get his aim down, but was too lazy to stand up and get them, so he waited till they piled on. Kakuzu watched as he went through his whole pack of kunais and decided to help him out a little. He unraveled a long thread from his arm and shot it out at the shurikens, and used the thread to loop through all of the shurikens, and pull them all out at once. The thread moved in front of Naruto and dropped them all at his feet. Keep up the practice, said Kakuzu. He quickly picked them all up off the ground and got serious. He stood up and started to really toss the shurikens at the tree, digging them deep into its already scarred trunk. Kakuzu watched how some of his shurikens veered off course, and he could see that Naruto wasn't taking the wind into calculation, another thing he'd need to teach him later. They waited for a good hour before Kakuzu sensed someone nearby. Naruto, wrap it up. We got company. Naruto did as he was told and quickly ran over to the tree, pulling out all the shurikens with all his strength since they were in pretty deep. After he got all of them, he put them in his pouch and rushed over to Kakuzu, waiting for their contact. Kakuzu saw 3 men walking towards them. One man had ash-gray-colored hair tied in a high ponytail, light blue eyes, a baby blue kimono with a long indigo-colored vest over that, brown gloves, shin guards, and a blue Hoshi headband. His 2 followers had a dark blue ninja vest and an indigo-colored ninja outfit, similar to Konoha except different color. One of the men had black hair that went down while the other was a large bald man. The three ninjas stopped across from Kakuzu with the leader asking, "Tell me, are you Kakuzu the mercenary for hire?" Kakuzu nodded. The man grinned saying, "My name is Akahoshi. My two companions are Shiso, man with hair, and Yotaka, bald guy." "Okay, now what's the plan?" Kakuzu asked. Akahoshi told him, "Let's go to Hoshi first, and I'll fill you in then. Please, we don't have much time." Kakuzu looked at Naruto and picked him up and sat him on his shoulder, and he followed Akahoshi and his men. Hashigakure. Kakuzu, Akahoshi, Shiso, and Yotaka emerged from the Hashikage tower. All but Kakuzu had injuries, and Kakuzu wasn't amused with how the battle turned out. Kakuzu quickly overwhelmed the so-called Kage very easily, and he didn't even need to use his forbidden techniques. Once the four men walked out of the tower, Kakuzu asked them, "Where's my money?" Akahoshi smiled and pulled out a scroll and unsealed its content. Popping out of the scroll was a metal case full of money. "I'm a man of my word, so here is your payment, Kakuzu." Like every other time Kakuzu gets paid, he counts the money. But on an occasion like this, he closed the case and took it, saying, "It better be here, otherwise you'll be fighting a ninja of Kage level." Akahoshi smiled, replying, "If it's one thing I'm known for in this village, it's that I keep my word." Kakuzu raised his hand in the air with his hand open and quickly made a fist. After that, a huge explosion erupted at the base of the tower, and the entire lobby of the tower gave way and the tower collapsed. The three Hoshi nins were surprised and ran from the building so as not to get caught up in the explosion. Kakuzu leapt high up in the air and landed onto one of the buildings next to Naruto, who was in a meditating position and was making the ram hand sign. Kakuzu told Naruto, "We got our payment, we don't need to stay here any longer." Naruto agreed and quickly jumped onto Kakuzu's shoulder, and Kakuzu began running away from the building at high speeds so as not to get connected with the explosion. The three Hoshi ninjas stopped and looked up at the building, watching it as it crumbled. Yotaka shouted, "Should we go after him?" Akahoshi held his hand out, saying, "No. This actually works better." A nuke nin appears and attacks out Hashikage and kills him, taking the money left in his office, before setting off a series of explosive tags. Shiso asked, "So do we tell them that Kakuzu did it?" Akahoshi shook his head, saying, "No, we can't do that. Until I am able to control the meteorite's chakra, we wouldn't stand a chance against that man if we released that it was him. By the time I'm able to do that, it will be of no use to us. I'll let him leave with this one, but should I see him again, I will kill him the next time." He paused for a moment, telling both men, "Let's get to work. NBU should be here soon, and we have to explain what's happened." Both men agreed, and the three jumped away from the building. Outside of Hashigakure, Naruto and Kakuzu were sitting on a cliff, and the little ninja was the one counting the money while Kakuzu unraveled a scroll he found inside the Hashikage's office. He glanced through the scroll and saw that they were methods to use jutsu based off of a meteorite. He remembered the Hashikage trying to explain the dangers to Akahoshi about a certain power, though Kakuzu held no interest in such a thing. He made an assumption that these techniques would be useless unless you used the meteorite's power, but that didn't mean that he couldn't make a knockoff copy of the techniques. Naruto finished counting the money and told Kakuzu, "It's all here, Dad." Kakuzu rolled the scroll back up and told Naruto, "Congratulations are in order, Naruto." Naruto was a little bit confused and tilted his head to the side. "What I mean, Naruto, is that you killed the Kage," said Kakuzu. Now he was even more confused. "What do you mean, Dad?" Kakuzu grabbed the case and told Naruto, "What I'm saying is that I left the Hashikage crippled and on a deathbed, but you pulled the trigger with the explosives." Naruto followed Kakuzu when he started walking off, saying, "But I didn't do anything really, Dad. I don't feel comfortable being congratulated on something I had nothing to do with." Kakuzu looked at Naruto and said, "Whether you want the congratulations or not is not up to you. Now let's deposit the money and we'll take a little break at the villa." Naruto quietly followed him back to their home in the land of the moon. A week later, Konoha. Minato was working in his office talking to his sensei Jiraiya while he was working. Jiraiya was off in the corner with a typewriter on a roll with his new story of Ika Ika novels. Minato was still going through his daily routine of approving and denying important documents, going through the new squads for the newest graduates, picking the squad leaders, and going through mission assignments. Jiraiya was snickering after completing another chapter. "Hey Minato, I'm on a roll over here. Yet another masterpiece of the great Jiraiya." Minato smiled, saying, "Yeah, and all it cost you were 2 broken ribs, a few bruises, some lacerations, and fractured skull from the women at the bathhouse." Jiraiya told his student, "It's all for the sake of my readers, who are the hardworking citizens, to loyal ninjas all around the nations, and even the daimyos. So you can see that I have a lot of responsibility." Minato rolled his eyes and continued with his work, and Jiraiya did the same. The two men worked in silence for a few hours before there came a knock at his door. Minato looked up from his work and called out, "Enter." The door opened up to reveal his secretary holding a document, handing it over to him. Hokage-sama, this is a report from the ninja village Hashigakure. Minato took the document and said arigato. His secretary bowed to him and took her leave. Minato looked over the document and clearly heard his sensei say, "Tell me why we have an alliance with them. That village has no ninjas worth mentioning, nor do they have any power we need to concern ourselves with." Minato kept glancing over the work and told his sensei, "True, and it would seem that they aren't very powerful either. Apparently their Hashikage was killed a week ago by a nukenin. They have only a lead that it was a man wearing mask and hood that hid his face and an accomplice that looked to be either a very short person or a child." Minato tossed the document on his desk saying, "Since we are in an alliance with them, they are requesting that we send over a squad to help track the assassin and that they will pay whatever the amount is for the mission." Jiraiya asked, "You gonna do it?" Minato pulled out from his drawer, "Most likely the evidence is washed away since they waited a week, but I'll send an Inuzuka, a Aburame, and a Hyuga to do the job. I think I'll send Erasure on this mission so he could be happy with finding more information on Naruto." Jiraiya sighed, saying to his student, "It's been 8 years now, Minato. I know that you and the rest of your family believe that he's alive, but in this world and in these times it's highly unlikely. Like with that whole Kumogakure situation last year, ninjas will do whatever it takes to get the edge on others, by any means. With the Hyuga's heiress, they would probably use her to breed stronger ninjas, and with Naruto they might have had an idea in their head that they could have an army of flash ninjas." Minato looked at his sensei with unease, but Jiraiya continued, "Look, I know you don't like the idea of something bad happening to Naruto, but that's just how this world is. Especially with if it is IWA, then it's even less likely since Iwa's economy is on the low, and they would be in a desperate situation to kidnap him." Minato leaned back in his chair and pulled out from his desk a book and tossed it lightly to his sensei. Jiraiya caught the book, he looked at it, and then placed it off to the side. Minato told him, "I named my son after the character in that book because I believed that Naruto would grow up to be just like the protagonist in that book. I wanted to be able to see him actually grow to be like that, but 8 years ago, as you know, made it impossible. Now my family won't give up until he is back home where he belongs. Everyone else might have given up after this long, but not us. I refuse to believe that my son dead, and my family refuses that as well." Jiraiya stood up and unrolled a seal with writings already on it, and sealed his typewriter inside of it. He put the scroll away and put on his sandals, telling the man before him, "Well, I'll be back." Jiraiya opened the window and said, "I'm gonna go on a scouting mission to look for an 8-year-old who went missing. I'll let you know what I find. See ya, Gaki." Jiraiya jumped out the window to the ground below. Minato smiled, saying to himself, "Thank you, sensei." Hokage Mansion. Kushina, Haru and Haru's friends from the academy were sitting down watching a sparring match between Erasure and Itachi. Haru's friends from school consisted of Hinata Hyuga, Sakura Haruno, Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara, Choji Akimichi, Shino Aburame, Sasuke Uchiha, Kiba Inuzuka, and Kiba's puppy he got named Akamaru. All were watching the fight at the Hokage's training ground and were eager to see the fight between the two. Kushina thought it was a bit strange that Itachi would be the one to seek out her son to fight instead of the other way around. Erasure considered himself a normal everyday ninja, but Itachi was known as the strongest Uchiha and a genius among his peers. Itachi though kept seeking out Erasure and always wanted to fight him. Itachi rarely challenges other ninjas and Erasure doesn't challenge others at all. Erasure and Itachi were keeping their fight a pure taijutsu match and didn't want to risk using weapons or jutsus since a stray attack could harm the kids. Itachi had his Sharingan activated and Erasure had nothing but his pure speed on his side. Itachi tried to punch Erasure, but he knocked Itachi's fist away and he punched back at Itachi. The two kept countering the other's moves and it seemed the fight would be at a standstill. Both teens stopped, however, when they sensed someone enter. They looked over to where Kushina was and saw 2 ANBU ninjas bowing down to her. Kushina noticed them as well, asking in a cheery tone, "Hello, is there something you need?" One of the ANBU was a woman with purple hair and a cat mask, while the other had on a tiger mask and he had spiky brown hair. The tiger masked ANBU said, "Kushina-sama, the Hokage needs to speak with Arashi-sama immediately concerning a mission." Kushina looked from the 2 ANBU to her son and waved him over. Erasure used his speed and appeared right next to his mother in a blink of an eye. Erasure asked, "My father sends for me?" Both the ANBU were still bowing and nodded their heads. Erasure reached over and grabbed a towel to wipe the sweat off of his neck. "Alright, let me get into my gear and I'll head up there as soon as I'm ready." Both the ANBU nodded again and blurred out of the area. Haru stood up and asked, "You're leaving already? You just got home barely a week ago." Haru began to pout. Erasure shook his head and kneeled down to his sister's level, saying, "Look, Aniki is a ninja of Konoha now. I will always be called away on missions for weeks at a time, maybe even a month. This is something Aniki needs to do." Kushina kept smiling, telling her daughter, "Besides, you'll have to do the same thing when you graduate from the academy and become a ninja like your Aniki." Haru looked at her mom to her brother, saying, "Okay." Erasure patted her head and told everyone, I'll try and get this mission over with quickly so I'll be back to see if I'm maybe made a Jounin sensei this year. Kushina said to her son, don't keep your hopes up. Itachi walked over to Arisha asking, mind if we pick up where we left off when you return? Arisha rubbed the back of his head, yeah, I guess if there's time. Itachi told his friend, good luck on your mission. Arisha gave Itachi a thumbs up and jolted to his room to get set up. Kushina stood up from her spot asking the kids, okay, how about I make you guys lunch? Choji stood up first shouting, food. Ino hit him in the back of his head scolding him, be more respectful. Hinata bowed to Kushina saying, thank you for letting me eat here. Kushina hugged Hinata saying, oh, you're so cute when you're polite. Haru said to her friends, come on guys, let's go wait in the living room till mom finishes cooking. The rest of the kids nodded and ran inside following after Haru. Sasuke started to run, but noticed his brother was putting on his sandals and was about to leave. Aniki, are you leaving? Itachi looked at his brother and said, yes, Sasuke-kun, I am. Have fun with your friends, there is something I need to do. Sasuke said, I can go with you if you want. Itachi made a hand motion with his hand for Sasuke to go. Sasuke ignored it and ran at his brother. Itachi put his index and middle finger together and lightly poked Sasuke in the forehead saying, another time Sasuke-kun. Sasuke rubbed the spot where Itachi poked him and saw his brother walk back into the Hokage's training ground before jumping over the huge wall separating the training ground from the rest of the area around them. Kushina watched the whole interaction and kept on smiling saying to Sasuke, Sasuke-kun, are you gonna stay? Sasuke looked at Kushina and said hi. He ran past her and into the living room where the rest of the kids were at. Kushina then went into the kitchen to prepare lunch for the kids. Land of the Moon. The Land of the Moon was a giant island in the shape of a crescent moon. 3 years ago, Kakuzu purchased a villa home by the cliffs of the island that made perfect conditions for his and Naruto's training. He had been saving up the money to get a stable home in case they needed to hide out. There was a ninja system on the island called the Getsugekure, but Kakuzu refused to send Naruto there, and instead focused his time on training Naruto. He didn't have to worry about ninjas coming over to his home since they rarely come out to the side they live on. The island was a kind of resort for civilians, ninjas, and daimyos alike. The island had fancy restaurants, hotels, casinos, and many other kinds of entertainment. Kakuzu visits the casinos, but takes Naruto with him ever since they went to an underground casino and Naruto cleaned out the whole hotel and he didn't even know how to play. Naruto won at craps, blackjack, poker, even the slot machines. The devil himself couldn't best this kid in betting games. Naruto had luck that even God would envy. Kakuzu would take Naruto to the casino only once every time they came home. If they went every day, then Naruto would be banned from every casino on the island. The two walked the stone path to their home, coming to a 2-story villa, painted white with the brown tiles on the roof, 6 rooms, 3 bathrooms, a living room, a den room, and a study. Though smaller for most villas on the island, it fit the two perfectly. Kakuzu made the ram hand sign and the kanji for the word key appeared over the door, and it opened up by itself. Kakuzu told Naruto, I'm going to the bank on the island to deposit the money from our recent mission and I'll be back later. I want you to go into the weight room and begin your exercises. When I return, I'm going to start your element training. Understood. Naruto nodded and Kakuzu said, good. I'll see you later. Kakuzu walked back down the path back to town to the bank. Naruto walked inside the house and closed the door. Once the door shut, the kanji for the word lock appeared and it locked up the door. Naruto took off his sandals and his cloak. He hung up his cloak on a rack that was to his right, and he placed his sandals neatly by the wall. Naruto walked throughout the entranceway past the kitchen and into a room that was on the first floor. Naruto opened the door, and inside the room were weights of all sizes, some were even bigger than Naruto. He walked over to one of the windows and opened up the blinds to let some light in while he trained. After he did that, he opened the window letting fresh air in as well. Naruto reaches up and takes off his mask and hood, allowing his whole face to be shown. Naruto's face was completely normal, no scars or any other kind of marking was on his face, but his hair was very long. Instead of his being wild and spiking everywhere, his hair was spiked going backward away from his face, and his hair was long going a little bit past his shoulder blades. Naruto unravels a black hair tie from his wrist and ties his long hair into a ponytail. After he tied up his hair, he walked over to some weights that were perfect size weights for him. He started on his workouts he always does whenever he comes home, though he couldn't wait to begin his element training. Kakuzu had told him many times before that he was a little too young to start any kind of real ninjutsu training, but seeing as how he wants to teach him now means that Naruto might just be ready for it. 3 hours later. Kakuzu finished his business in town and was currently carrying a small slip of paper in his hand that he picked up from a ninja shop in town. He could clearly see his home walking up the stone path, doing the same thing as he did before he unlocked the door to his home and locked it back up with the same seal method. He looked on the coat rack and saw that Naruto had his cloak already put up. He took off his cloak and put it on the rack, took off his sandals and walked to the weight room. When he opened the door, he saw Naruto was hanging upside down on one of the wooden beams on the ceiling while lifting weights. Naruto paused and saw Kakuzu walk in, and he dropped the weights on the ground, not minding that the 2 weights dented the floor. He unhooked his legs from the beam and turned his body in the air and landed on his feet. Naruto was breathing heavily, sweating bullets, and Kakuzu can only assume that he hasn't stopped working out since he left him. Naruto asked, "So when do we start my element training?" Kakuzu held out a piece of paper saying, "Take this paper and charge chakra into it." Naruto took the paper and just looked at it for a moment, and he heard Kakuzu say, "If you charge chakra into that slip of paper, we will know what nature you are. If you're lightning, the paper crinkles; if you're fire, the paper burns; wind will slice it in half, earth crumbles it away, and water makes the paper get wet." Naruto closes his eyes and holds the paper between his index and middle finger, focusing his chakra through the paper. A second later, the paper splits down the middle. Naruto opens his eyes and says, "So I'm a wind nature?" Kakuzu nods his head, "Yes, you are." Kakuzu brings his hand to his chin and says, "I'm not going to teach you any jutsu until your body is truly ready to handle the strain. Until then, I'm going to teach you to turn even a rusty kunai into the sharpest weapon you could have." Kakuzu looks at the table to his right and sees Naruto's mask and hood. He grabs them and tosses them both to Naruto. "Put your mask back on and we'll start your training up the mountain." Naruto takes the hood first, and puts it over his long hair and tucking it into the collar of his black shirt. Then he takes his mask and wraps it over his hood and hooking it so that his nose and mouth were covered. Kakuzu walked out of the room with Naruto following behind him. The two went into the kitchen and packed a few days' worth of food and placed it into a pack. Naruto grabbed a single kunai and put it into his ninja pouch. After they finished packing, they left the house and headed for the island's only mountain. Top of the mountain. The air was thin up the mountain, but thanks to Naruto's training he was able to withstand the limited air up there. They stopped next to a small pond that was frozen over because of how cold it was up there, but they were mostly up there because there was no one up there to bother Naruto's training. Kakuzu had taken 7 branches off of a few trees that had a lot of leaves on them. Kakuzu sat down and explained, "Okay, this is how we will start." He tosses the pack off to the side and says, "Listen, I don't expect you to pass this training exercise quickly. In fact, I don't think you'll get to the second phase until next year possibly." Naruto looks a little discouraged, but hears him say, "The reason I say this is because you're awfully young to begin such training, but if you master your element stages before Academy graduates, then you'll have an enormous edge over them." Kakuzu holds his hand out pointed to a rock across from him. Naruto gets the message and sits down crossing his legs. Kakuzu takes off a single leaf off of one of the branches and hands it to Naruto, telling him, "Take this leaf and hold it between both your hands." Naruto does as he's told and holds it between his hands so that it's directly between his palms. Kakuzu tells him next, "Now you're going to cut that leaf with just your chakra alone. Once you've cut the leaf completely in half, I will teach you the next step." Naruto nodded, agreeing with Kakuzu, and started to try and cut the leaf in half with his chakra. Kakuzu took this moment and decided to get some rest. He walked away from Naruto and leaned against a rock to sleep. Naruto kept sending chakra into his hand and checked every other minute to see the results, but every time it was the same. Naruto looked at the leaf and thought, "I will pass this stage before this month is up. I swear it." Naruto closed his hands around the leaf again and started to try and cut the leaf in half again. Kakuzu had his eye cracked a little as he watched Naruto train, thinking that was all the motivation he needed. "You'll pass the first stage, but not anytime soon." Kakuzu closed his eyes again to enjoy the little peace he gets in life. Konoha, Hokage Tower. Minato was sitting at his desk going over the mission with the 4 ninjas assigned to the mission. "Okay, this is a B-rank mission, and you'll only be bodyguards and you'll help with the tracking. If you cannot find anything that could lead you into the assassin's trail, then you are to immediately return back home." He looked at the ninjas before him. One was his son, the other was a young ninja wearing a light cream-colored jacket with a high collar, brown short hair, a 4-foot gourd on his back, and black glasses. The second was a woman with fan-like tattoos on both of her cheeks, brown hair tied in a ponytail with bangs on each side of her face, a light green ninja vest, tight bike shorts, and light green wristbands. The fourth and final was a man wearing the standard jounin attire. His headband was made into a bandana that covered the top of his head, white pupil-less eyes. He continued by saying, "Now apparently the assassin or assassins killed the leader in his own tower in an underground training area reserved for him. After they killed him, they activated explosive notes that buried him deep underground. They seemed to think that he either was killed before the tags went off, or the tags were the cause of his death. Either way, they want the assassins brought back dead or alive. Personally, I don't understand why such a mission was asked, but I accepted this mission because of the alliance we have with them. Erasure Namikaze, Hana Inuzuka, and Kohyuga, you will follow Hayashi Aburame as he will be the team leader on this mission." He paused for a moment, asking them, "Do you all understand your mission?" All of them said in unison, "Hi Hokage-sama." Minato smiled and waved them off. Erasure stayed behind, however, to ask, "Do you think there is any connection with Naruto there?" Minato looked at his son, telling him, "To be honest, this is the strongest clue we've had in 8 years." Erasure was a little confused, asking, "What do you mean, Dad?" Minato explained, "For the past few years there have been reports of a mercenary going around. No one reports him because they all fear him and they dare not give up what he looks like, or his name." Erasure asked, still confused, "What does that have to do with anything?" Minato continued by saying, "This particular merc always had an accomplice with him that I now believe to be a child, and the two have been working for at least 3 years. But the strange thing is that 8 years ago he went missing and didn't return into the mercenary game until 3 years ago, and that's when his little friend started to be seen with him." Arashi's eyes flared for a moment as he asked, "You think he had something to do with Naruto's kidnapping?" Minato could see the look of anger in his eyes and said, "It is possible, that child may be Naruto, but there is that possibility that it's not. In any case, I wanted you to check it out." Erasure asked him next, "Do we have anything on the guy's name?" Minato shook his head, "No, he only gives his name apparently to high-paying clients, and we don't know who any of them are. He gives a code name to the others, which is Ragdoll. Other than that, we don't have any leads on how to contact him." His son immediately turned around, walking to the door, telling Minato, "I'll make sure to find out who Ragdoll is and if he's connected with Naruto's kidnapping." Minato stopped him as he got to the door. "Remember your job as a ninja first. When you are given a mission, you need to handle it as a ninja and put family affairs off to the side. Capture him alive if possible, if not, then kill him." Erasure had his hand on the doorknob, and he only nodded his head, understanding. He opened the door and left the room to join up with his squad. Konoha East Gate. Since the 4 were called by the Hokage, they all immediately assumed it was for a mission, so they had packed beforehand. Joining along with the 4 were 3 Akita dogs with black/brown fur covering the top and cream color white on their underbellies. Hayashi, like all his clansmen, kept his sentences short and unemotional. "Hashigakure is only a half-day's travel if we run. We'll get there and do our job as per orders. Anytime when we are relieved of duty, you may move around the village freely. Though stay in Hashigakure territory." His teammates nodded, agreeing with the squad captain. Hayashi told them all, "Now let's go." With no objections from the others, they all ran out of the east gate, heading to Hashigakure. Erasure had another thought on his mind altogether. "I'm getting closer to you, Naruto. Just hang on a little while longer, Aniki is coming." Hashigakure. Team Hayashi made it to Hashigakure on schedule and began their search for the assassin. Erasure started off asking which direction the assassin headed, and they were directed that the assassin and his accomplice headed south of the village. Hana and her dog started off by looking for a scent. She told her team that there were a number of scents, and that they were all faint. Ko said they should follow it since the village's ANBU was on the trail of whoever it was, and that they might find a stronger scent should they follow it. Hayashi asked the current village leader Akahoshi for a few of the village's ANBUs so they could find the culprits. Akahoshi agreed and spared them 3 ANBU ninjas. Team Hayashi headed south following the scents of the ANBU and possibly the assassin, but the team still had their doubts since the scents were over a week old. Hana's hounds were more mature and their sense of smell was the greatest out of all the other dogs in her clan aside from her mother's dog Kuramaru. After a while of running south, one of the ANBU ninja told the group, "This is where we lost the trail and returned back to the village." The group came to a stop and the Inuzukas got to work. All of them, including Hana, put their noses to the ground looking for the separate scent. Ko activated his clan's Kekii Genkai called the Byakugan. Veins on the side of his head next to his eyes appeared and it allowed him to see great distances. Ko began looking for any kind of mistakes the assassin could have made when he made his escape. Hayashi pulled out a map of the elemental nations and examined it. After a while he pointed out, "There seems to be a few towns along this way. Though they wouldn't do much of a hideout." Ko found nothing in his search. Either the assassin was very careful not to leave any kind of evidence, or he summoned an animal, or something to give him flight to avoid the ground. I can't see any trace of anything to show what direction he went in. I doubt he was going to take the time to cover up his tracks and risk ANBU catching up to him. Hana stood up straight, telling all of them, "I can't pick up a clean scent. Even if we follow it, it will just disappear. If that map is correct, then there is an ocean some ways from here and the salt in the air will interfere with the tracking. There is also that the air temperature is changing, signaling that it will rain soon." Erasure told the ANBU, "We can't do anything anymore. The trail will be wiped out before we get a good trail." Hayashi asked the ANBU, "Is there anything you didn't tell us? Anything that could help us find the man who killed your leader?" The leading ANBU shook his head. "I'm sorry, no. The only thing we have is that the village leader Akahoshi heard the explosion and went to investigate, and found the tower completely destroyed, and he saw the assassin pick up a smaller person. Though he was more concerned for the Hashikage that he didn't bother to follow them. After a few more ninjas gathered, he sent 5 ANBU in the direction we are now following." Ko asked them, "Why didn't anyone hear the battle?" I'm sure that since it's underground someone would have heard the battle sounds or even felt the tremors of the fight. Another one of the ANBU explained, a number of reasons could be because our leader was so strong that his usual training days result in small tremors that the village feels, and the sound one could be that either the Kage himself erected it so as not to wake the village, or the assassin did to avoid any ANBU coming to investigate. Hayashi brought his hand to his chin. No, if it was the Kage, then he would have dispelled the sound barrier to alert that he was under attack, and I don't think the assassin would have enough time to erect one himself. Also, his partner was seen outside the tower, so whoever that was couldn't have put a barrier around the tower. Erishur continued, there are too many variables to take into account and piece them together. Either way, this mission is a failure. I say we return to Hashigakure. Not left with many other options, they all headed back north toward Hashigakure. The team made it back to Hashigakure and told the current village chief Akahoshi about what happened. Akahoshi was a little disappointed that nothing was found, but he still paid them for their mission. Erishur asked the man, did you get a good look at who this assassin's assistant was? Akahoshi looked to Erishur, answering, no, I'm sorry, the only thing I could take notice of was his black cloak and his height. Erishur asked him another question, have you heard of a mercenary going around called Ragdoll? Akahoshi began to think that this was perfect for him, so they are on the hunt for Kakuzu, it would seem. I could use this. If I can give them a little piece about Kakuzu, then Konoha will hunt him down, eliminating the problem for me. Akahoshi acted like he was thinking and said, come to think of it, I do know that name from one of our ninjas who said he was meant to do an undercover mission with a man who went by that name. Erishur lit up a little. Where can I find this ninja? Akahoshi thought next, gotcha. Unfortunately he died 3 months ago, but then I was with the Hashikage as his advisor when giving out missions. He was supposed to rendezvous with Ragdoll and the man giving out the mission at the black market in the land of bears. Hayashi asked Akahoshi, why would you and your Kage allow your ninja on such a mission? He explained to the Abirame, it was to get close to the man assigning the mission. We had reason to believe that the man was on our hit list in the bingo book, but it turns out that the man called off the mission at the last minute, and he said he didn't see either of the targets. Erishur said, do you know who the man who knows Ragdoll looks like? Akahoshi again remembered the man who told him about Kakuzu and said, yes, a man in his late 30s, early 40s, about 5 feet 6 inches, black short hair with a little graze, and a handlebar mustache. If I remember correctly, Arnin said that he handed out jobs in a bar called Red Dawn. The group took in every word that came from Akahoshi's mouth and put them to memory. Akahoshi bowed, saying to the group, I hope this information helps you. Erishur grinned and started walking off, saying out loud, more than you know. The rest of the group followed after Erishur after bowing politely to the man. After they were out of sight, Yotaka walked out from the shadows, watching the Konoha Nins walk off, asking his leader, do you think they could kill that man? Akahoshi responded, I could care less. Whether they can or not isn't any of our concern. Forget about it, let's have the funeral arrangements for the old man, and then we'll continue with the start training. Let's go. The two Hoshi Nins walked back to oversee the repairs to the Hashikage Tower. Outside Hashigakure, Hayashi asked Erishur what he intended to do with this information. He, like many ninjas in Konoha, know about Naruto's kidnapping and of Erishur combing through the elemental lands to look for his long-lost brother. Erishur simply told his team, I'm going to the land of bears to find that man. He knows Ragdoll, and Ragdoll has some kind of connection to my brother's kidnapping, and I'm gonna find out what it is. He started to walk off, but stopped to tell the others, you guys can go back to Konoha if you want, but I'm heading to the land of bears to find that man who knows Ragdoll. After he said that, he continued walking, leaving the team behind. The 3 leaf Nins looked at one another before following after Erishur. Erishur heard footsteps behind him. Looking back, he saw Ko, Hayashi, Hana and her Niken following behind. He smiled and happily said to them, thanks for accompanying me, everyone. Hana gave him a small smile. Well, can't just let you go off by yourself. Hayashi said to his team, well, let's hurry up and get to bear country. The group nodded and they all started dashing for the land of bears. The next day, land of bears. The group disguised themselves as ordinary citizens, and Hana had her Niken follow a bit behind so that the dogs looked like strays. They were able to get into the underground catacombs that had the black market. Rogue ninjas came together and set this all up, and none of the ninja nations attempted to bring a stop to it. Since rogue Nins always come through here, it was always a breeze to find them. Infiltrating can be easy if you know how. The 4 ninjas waded through rogue ninjas, thieves, and other kinds of criminals. Ko activated his Byakugan under a mask he was currently wearing, searching for the bar. The 4 moved to the side to allow Ko to find it. Found it, said Ko. He stood up and made a hand motion for them to follow him. They followed Ko through the large crowds, and they made it to a small building that had a red sphere on a sign with the words Red Dawn written in kanji. Hayashi told his group, Hana, Ko, head around back, and in case he tries to escape, Hana, use your Niken to keep an eye on the front of the building. Ko, keep your Byakugan activated as well. Ko and Hannah nodded as she made a low growl that her Niken picked up that were waiting around the corner. The three hounds walked from around the building and laid down in a group diagonally with the building. Ko and Hannah then casually went around the building and to the back. Hayashi said to Erishur, "Let's go." Erishur nodded, and as they entered, Hayashi added, "I'll let you do the talking." Upon pushing the doors open, the smell of smoke, alcohol, piss, and many other assorted smells would make an ordinary man toss up his lunch. The two remained in the doorway and saw that the entire bar full of people stopped what they were doing and all focused on them. Erishur and Hayashi ignored the glares they were getting and moved roughly through the crowd. They scanned through all the gruff and dangerous-looking men and even a few women. Erishur found who they were looking for, and he slightly moved his foot to tap Hayashi. The Aburaim glanced at Erishur and saw him make an eye movement to a section of the bar. Hayashi looked in the direction and saw the man with the handlebar mustache. Erishur moved first and started walking over to the man's table, who sat alone. Hayashi stayed behind at the bar to keep watch. The man looked up and saw Erishur stop at his table. "What do you want, kid?" he said with a deep voice. Erishur sat down at the table without the man asking him. "I need some info about someone you might know." "My name is Kaze." Erishur gave him a fake name so he's not identified. The man cocked an eyebrow at Erishur, saying, "You got balls, kid, to think you can sit at my table without my consent. Get the fuck out of here." Erishur reached into his pocket and then laid down some money. The man eyed the money and asked, "Name's Khan, so what do you want to know, kid?" Erishur slid the money over to him. "I'll give you more if I like the info. I want to know about a man named Ragdoll." Khan looked a little amazed and shoved the money back at Erishur. "Get lost, kid, I don't know nothing." Erishur insisted by telling him, "I have a mission to meet the man, but I'm limited on info and you're the only one I can find information on him." Khan gave Erishur a foul look, raising his voice a little. "I said get lost." Erishur returned his words a little more lower with venom lacing his voice. "Listen, you will tell me what I need to know about Ragdoll, otherwise I'll get the info out of you by force." "Now what will it be?" Khan chuckled and said, "Big mistake, boy." He rose his hand and snapped his fingers. Soon the men in the bar jumped out of their seats and rushed Erishur. The young Leaf Neen was not intimidated and merely dropped his henge, and two kunais shot out of his shirt sleeves and into his hands. Hayashi also dropped his henge and unleashed all of his insects. Ko and Hannah busted through the back and leapt into the battle, and Hannah's Niken jumped through the windows and attacked a few people as well. The little bar room battle ended 5 minutes later with the Leaf Neens completely unhurt, but as for everyone else, it was either injured or dead. Khan was laying on the floor unconscious during the struggle to escape. Hannah sighed, saying, "So I'm guessing the diplomatic solution was a bust?" Erishur smiled and said, "Well, it still was politics. We had the yes-sayers and we had the nay-sayers." Ko couldn't help but chuckle at that. "Well, we got our target. Now I say we get out of here before someone comes and checks this place out." Hayashi agreed and retracted his bugs from women in the bar after they knocked the women out by draining enough chakra to make them lose consciousness. He then walked over to the downed Khan and tied him up with one of the bar brawler's jackets and tossed him over his shoulder. "Now let's go," said Hayashi. The team nodded and they darted out of the bar as quickly as they could and made it out of the underground black market. Land of the Moon. Naruto was inspecting his leaf and found a little nick in the leaf. But that was only if you really inspected it. He soon placed the leaf back into the palm of his hand and began to try and cut the leaf in half with his chakra. Kakuzu left and was down the mountain cooking their dinner. Cooking a few rabbits he caught roaming around the forest, and he caught a few fish from a river stream that wasn't too far away from where he was. He looked up at the sky and then saw that the moon was coming out a little bit, and decided it was time to get Naruto for dinner. Kakuzu's back began to move irregularly, and soon a tiger mask slid from under his cloak along with some black threads, taking form of a large creature with a hunched back. It headed up the mountain to go fetch Naruto. As he waited for his mask to get Naruto, he leaned up against a tree and just relaxed. But that was short-lived, as he turned his head to the side after he sensed someone close by. He got up slowly and prepared himself, but called out, "Who's out there? Show yourself." Not soon after a man appeared and the campfire illuminated him so Kakuzu could make him out. The man was tall, at least a whole head taller than him. He was wearing a black cloak with red clouds on them, a casa hat that covered his face, and a giant sword on his back wrapped up in bandages with a yellow handle and a skull trinket at the bottom. A second man walked out soon after, but he was a short hunched-over man wearing the same cloak as the first and a casa hat as well. The shorter man spoke with a very deep voice. "You're Kakuzu, are you not?" Kakuzu wasn't fazed that the man knew his name, but was a little concerned that someone actually found him. "What would you do to me if I wasn't?" mocked Kakuzu. The taller man reached up for his casa hat and said, "We've been looking for you for quite some time. We got info on you from a guy in the land of bears at least a week ago. You're a hard man to track down." He then took his casa hat off entirely, and his face was visible. Kakuzu narrowed his eyes at the man and examined his face: blue skin, gill-like features under his shark-like eyes, blue hair, razor-sharp teeth, and a kiri headband with a slash going through it. I see now. You're Kisame Hashigaki, the monster of the hidden mist, said Kakuzu. Kisame smirked and said, oh, so you know about me, do ya? This makes it a lot easier. Kakuzu crossed his arms and asked, why would an S-class criminal like yourself seek me out? Also, who are you? Kakuzu was referring to the shorter man. The short man moved his body slightly to allow his casa hat to fall to the ground. He had tan skin, a shredded black rag covered the bottom half of his face, and 5 black rows of hairs that went to the back of his head, and then stood up. He then announced himself as, my name is Sasori. Kakuzu again narrowed his eyes and then said, Sasori of the Red Sand. Well, this is a bit of a surprise. 2 S-class criminals have business with me. Don't I feel lucky? You should, came a third voice from the forest. Kakuzu turned his attention to the forest where a third man walked out. This man had orange hair that spiked up, piercings in his nose, bottom lip, and ears, the same black cloak, but his eyes had a ripple-like pattern in them. Kakuzu could feel an unnatural energy coming off of him, and remained even more vigilant. The strange man took a step forward and said, I have a proposition for you that you might like. 10 minutes later. Naruto was riding on the back of the tiger mask as the two made their way down the mountain. Naruto, however, brought the leaf with him, and kept trying to cut it in half with his chakra, but nothing really happened. They finally reached the camp when Naruto saw 3 people talking with Kakuzu. He leapt off of the tiger mask and ran over to Kakuzu and grabbed hold of his leg and hid behind him, peeking out to look at the men who were now looking at him. The man with the orange hair looked from Naruto to Kakuzu, saying, if your answer is yes, then meet us in the land of the shadows within this month's end. We don't keep our hideouts for very long. The man turned around and walked off with Sasori and Kisame following behind him. Once they left, Naruto looked up at Kakuzu and asked, Dad? Who were those guys? Kakuzu didn't say anything at first, still looking into the direction the men disappeared in, and he told Naruto, listen, Naruto. I'm going to go see an old friend by myself. I want you to remain in the house at all times. Don't open the door for nobody and just stay put. Take some leaves inside and continue your training. I'll even leave Tiger behind so you have protection. Do you understand? Naruto nodded, and Kakuzu picked him up and retracted the tiger mask back into his body. He kicked some dirt on the fire, and on their food, and then ran for their home. When he got to the house, he unlocked the door with the seal and set Naruto inside with his hand on the door. He told him, leave the entire house dark. I don't want anyone to know that you are here. Don't even open the blinds. I'll be back before this weekend's, I promise. Naruto nodded, and Kakuzu walked over to a tree and pulled a branch off covered in leaves and handed it to Naruto. He then held out his arm, and the tiger mask separated from his body and took its giant form again, heading into the home. He took one last glance at Naruto and patted him on the head and closed the door, activating the seal. Kakuzu then made his way quickly for the docks. 3 days later, Land of Bears. Kakuzu made it inside the underground black market and immediately headed for the Red Dawn bar. He began knocking people over as he walked, ignoring their rants for him to watch where he was going. He turned the final corner to the bar and saw that the windows were broken. Walking inside, he saw that the bar was partially destroyed and a few of the men had bruises and other kind of injuries. Once the men saw Kakuzu, they immediately shrunk down, trying to avoid looking at him. Kakuzu walked over to the bar and asked the bartender, where is Kon? The bartender poured Kakuzu a drink and said, some Konoha ninjas busted in here and arrested the guy. It wasn't difficult to tell who they were. The most noticed was the guy with blonde hair and blue eyes, then there was a chick with 3 dogs, another with white eyes, and the final one was a tall guy with a gourd on his back and a lot of insects. So we had a Inuzuka, an Aburame, and a Hyuga bust up my place. The blonde hair, though, he looked familiar, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Kakuzu shot out of his seat and pulled the man over the bar and table and demanded, what did they ask him? The bar owner was now scared shitless and stuttered, they was asking about you, ragdoll. Kakuzu pushed the man back, causing him to hit his back to his shelf that had many different kinds of alcohol. He ran out of the bar, knocking the door down in the process. He ran out of the underground market and up top and headed back for home, thinking, blonde hair? Could it have been Erasure Namikaze? Shit, if they have Kon, then they could link him together with my other contacts. I need to get Naruto, and we need to get to the Land of Shadows now. Kakuzu kept running to quickly get to Naruto before someone else could. Konoha, same time. Minato was standing in the ANBU interrogation wing with his son standing next to him on his right, and his wife to his left, watching 2 ninjas interrogate the man named Kon. The first man was large, with an imposing figure with 2 distinct scars on his face, large black coat, and a gray militant outfit. The second man had long platinum blonde that's tied in a high ponytail, a long red vest with a green ninja vest underneath, tan-colored arm guards, and a black ninja outfit. The three watched the interrogation from another room through a glass window. After some time, both the men stepped out and Minato walked over to them asking, "Inoichi, Ibiki, what did you find?" The more larger man named Ibiki spoke. "I found out that the guy waits for Ragdoll to contact him, and as it turns out Ragdoll's real name is Kakuzu of Takigakure." Erasure and Minato were a little stunned, and Erasure asked him, "You mean the same guy who attacked the Shodame a long time ago?" Ibiki nodded and looked to Inoichi, who spoke next, "The one and the same. From what I saw going through his furthest memories back was that he received a kidnapping order 8 years ago, but I can't tell who it was who issued it. The memory is a little fuzzy, but he was to meet up with the kidnappers and deliver Naruto to whoever it was. But as I said, the memory is a little fuzzy to make out. If you can get me a sketch artist, I can give you a detailed description of what Kakuzu looks like." Minato looked to the entrance of the room to the ANBU standing guard, making a head nod for him to go find one. The ANBU agreed and quickly left. Kushina stepped forward to both men asking, "Is there anything else?" Ibiki smiled and said, "Matter of fact, there is Kushina-sama. As it turns out, whenever Kakuzu went to speak with this guy, there was always a little kid with him." Inoichi found out also that Kon asked Kakuzu about his departure from the Merc game, and he was told that he went into hiding to teach the kid how to become a ninja. He asked him what the kid's name was, but Kakuzu didn't release that. Erasure's eyes sparked with intensity as he said, "Then there's no doubt about it. With this kind of evidence, it's clear that Kakuzu still has Naruto." Minato was a little relieved that they found something more. He looked over to Kushina and saw her crying tears of joy. Surely he must know of some more people who know Kakuzu. If we can find that out, then we can squeeze Kakuzu into a position where he will get desperate, and he'll eventually slip up," said Minato. Inoichi nodded, telling him, "As it turns out, Hokage-sama, there are 2 other men who might know of Kakuzu. Like Kon, they have their fingers in every kind of good information. One man lives in the land of Meadows and the other lives close to the border of our country. The one in Meadows is named Rook and the other is named K." Minato smiled and told Inoichi, "I'm heading to the tower to get the mission started. I need you to give the accurate description to the artist of Kakuzu, Rook, and K, and then meet me in my office, Inoichi." Minato started heading for the door, and both Ibiki and Inoichi saluted the Kage and both the other Namikazes. Kushina thanked them for their hard work and left, following her husband, with Erasure following next to her. Erasure was very happy that they would soon have Naruto back again, but he wasn't as happy as his mother was. He looked at her and felt an aura of happiness and relief radiating off of her. The smile she had on couldn't be matched, and she was still crying tears of joy at the news. Minato was excited. 8 long years and he would finally get to see his son. Not once has he seen Naruto since he was on the front line of the Kyuubi attack and didn't have time to come see him. He had sent for an ANBU to fetch his daughter for the sealing, but when returning to see his son, he was gone. Now he finally would after 8 long years. A few hours later, Land of the Moon. Naruto had lit some candles and was sitting in the living room holding the leaf between his hands, trying to cut the leaf in half. He kept trying and trying. Stopping for a moment, he thought back to all the books and scrolls he was reading a long time ago. When it hit him that he did read a book about elements, and how the book gave a tip about wind element, and how it's the best as in a short to mid-range fight, and it can sharpen any weapon by adding nature to it. Naruto remembered also that you have to cut your chakra in half and grind the 2 together, sharpening them, and making the points thin. The thinner and sharper it is, the better it is. Naruto tossed the leaf with the small nicks in it off to the side and grabbed a new one from the branch Kakuzu gave him. He sat down in a meditating position, thinking sharp and thin. He held the leaf in his hands and began forcing chakra into his hands, and then he felt something. He opened his hands up and looked at the leaf. Though at most points kids would be jumping for joy, but Naruto looked at the leaf as if it was plain and saw a gash in the leaf that cut almost halfway into the leaf. Naruto tossed the leaf to the side and grabbed another, but as he reached out for the leaf, he felt extremely tired and collapsed, falling asleep from exhaustion. The tiger mask walked over to Naruto to inspect if he was okay and then grabbed a small blanket that was draped over the couch in the living room and put it on Naruto. Then it walked to the corner of the room and sat down, watching over him until Kakuzu returns. An hour before dark, Konoha, Hokage Tower. Minato was sitting at his desk memorizing the sketches done by the village's well-known sketch artist. Kushina was also in the office along with a few other ninjas. Minato held up the 3 pictures to the ninjas in front of him, saying, "These 3 are who you will be looking for." Minato holds up one picture at a time. Next, after holding up the first one to them, he says, "This man's name is Rook. He lives in the land of Meadows in a rundown inn." The man named Rook was an elderly man somewhere in his 50s, bald head, a long gray beard, and a scar on the top of his head. Minato then held up the next picture. This man is named K. From what Inoichi gathered was this man lives on the border between Konoha and Amigakure in a fairly large town called Rabin. The man called K was at least 30 years of age, black hair, a broad jawline, dark blue eyes, and earrings in both ears. Finally, Minato held up the last picture of Kakuzu with his mask and hood on, saying, "This is the man we are looking for. Earlier today I sent a squadron over to Takigakure since this man apparently hails from there, judging by his headband seen by Inoichi going through our prisoner's mind. As far as we know, percentage-wise there is a 90% chance that he either kidnapped my son himself or got a hold of him somewhere along the line." He set the pictures on his desk, saying, "The main thing is this. I'm giving your squads an Inoichi and a Hyuga to conduct your search, so here it is. Find these men, interrogate them to see if you can find any information about Kakuzu, especially his location. Once you find that out, I'll need you to send a message back to us, and I'll send reinforcements for you to capture Kakuzu. Am I understood?" The ninjas called in the room were Kakashi, still wearing his ANBU uniform, Erasure, Hana and her Niken, and Ko. Among them were another Hyuga named Takuma and two Yamanaka clan members named Jin and Hyo, and the final one was a young woman with purple hair, a brown coat jacket, a fishnet shirt underneath, a short skirt, and shin guards named Anko. The 8 ninjas walked over to the Hokage's desk and looked at the 3 pictures so that their faces were etched into their minds. Once that was done, Minato told them, "Kakashi, Erasure, Jin, and Ko will take K here in Fire Country with Kakashi as squad leader. Anko, Hana, Hyo and Takuma will take Rooken Meadows with Anko as squad leader. As I said before, I don't want any of you to attack or come into contact with Kakuzu by yourselves. Alert Konoha and I will send reinforcements. Got it?" All of them said in unison, "Hi Hokage-sama." Minato smiled and told all of them, "Good, you all leave in an hour before you leave. Team Kakashi will meet at the west gate and Team Anko will meet at the south gate. If either one of you completes your mission first, I want you to rendezvous with the other squad and exchange info by going to where the other squad is." Minato rolled out a map and pointed a line from Meadows to the town Rabin, saying, "Make sure to take this path so in the case that you run into each other. Now you are all dismissed." The 8 ninjas bowed and then left the room to get packed up for their missions. Kushina moved from the couch that was off to the side of the room to standing behind her husband, hugging him with her chin resting on his shoulder, saying, "You're doing an excellent job as Kage. Sarutobi would be proud of the job you're doing." Minato leaned his head back and kissed Kushina on her cheek the best he could, saying, "Thanks for saying that." There was a knock at his door, and he immediately called out, "Come in please." The door opened up, revealing his secretary. She walked over to his desk and gave a polite bow to both the Namikazes, saying, "The backup squads you've requested are on the waiting list as per your orders. Asuma Sarutobi, Kurina Yohi, Might Guy, and Ebisu Tobita are all awaiting your approval to go on the mission, as well as the 6 ANBU ninjas you've requested." Minato thanked her. Kushina saw that the woman looked a little unsure about something and she asked her, "Is there anything else?" The woman looked up and at Kushina and pulled out a slip of paper and handed it to her, saying, "This came from Tsunade-sama today." Kushina took the paper and read through it. After she was done reading it, she asked the secretary to leave. The SEC bowed and politely left the room. Minato looked at Kushina and saw the saddened look in her eyes and asked, "You okay?" Kushina crumbled up the piece of paper and threw it away, saying, "That woman, I'll never understand her. She doesn't try and contact me for 2 years and then she finally sends me a letter now when I needed her support the most. She ended up running off with Shizen." Minato pulled her into his lap and started stroking her hair, trying to comfort her. "She just wants to make amends. If not for herself, then she is probably trying for Shizen. I don't think Tsunade would want to come home if she knew that you hated her. The only people in this world who still mean anything to her are you, Shizen, and Jiraiya, and I don't think she could stand it if any of you 3 hated her." Kushina buried her face more into his chest and kept mumbling something, which only caused Minato to chuckle as he thought, "She is more like a child, but I still love her." The happy moment was interrupted when Minato said, "Someone is here." Kushina got up from his lap and looked at the window, and saw Itachi standing there with his ANBU attire on. Minato stood up from his chair and walked over to the window, opening it, allowing him to enter. Itachi bowed and said, "I apologize, Hokage-sama, for interrupting you in this fashion." Minato shrugged it off and asked, "It's no problem, Itachi-san. What do you got?" Itachi stood up and said, "The Uchiha clan is planning a coup. Land of Meadows, Team Anko." The 4-man cell was currently inside the rundown inn inside the back room. The Yamanaka Hyo had 3 scrolls spread out in a triangular pattern with Rook sitting in the center, and Hyo's hand was on the man's head, going through his mind. Takuma and Anko had interrogated the man by asking a series of questions, and for every one he got wrong, Anko would torture the man. It came down to where they were able to pinpoint the way he acted in their favor, which allowed Hyo to enter his mind without fail. Anko looked over to Hana asking, "How's the perimeter?" Hana took a good sniff and said, "I don't smell anyone nearby, and my Niken have the area surrounded and will alert me if anyone is near, but other than that the area is clear." Anko nodded her head and continued watching Hyo go to work. A full 15 minutes later, Hyo took his hand off of Rook's head and was really exhausted, but he told them, he doesn't know Kakuzu's exact location, only that he first met him on the coast about 3 years back. Anko immediately told her team, "Alright, let's go to the town Team Kakashi is in and we will exchange info." The team nodded and they rolled up what they were doing and Hyo picked the man up and took him with him. Rabin Town, Team Kakashi. Kakashi's squad a little more a fight to handle with this guy. The man was apparently a ninja with a large group of followers in this town, though Kakashi and his team dispatched them very quickly and easily. Jin was doing the same ritual as Hyo was doing with the scrolls and the mind reading. Kakashi had summoned some Niken and had them stay put outside a now destroyed bar. Erashur was also watching over the ritual along with Ko. Jin finally stopped 10 minutes and sweating and panting heavily, saying, "How does Inoichi-sama do this?" Kakashi walked over to his comrade and helped him to his feet, asking, "What did you see?" Jin took a few good deep breaths and told him, "I saw casinos, a festival, and some bars." Erashur asked him, "Is there anything else?" Jin put his hand up to let everyone know he need to catch a breath and he said, "I saw Kakuzu and the kid, but both had their masks on, but I also saw an island with ninjas wearing the Getsugekure headband." Ko then said, "So do you know if he lives there or was he just passing through?" Jin was caught up on his breathing and said clearly, "That I don't know, but it's our best bet." Kakashi and Erashur looked at each other and Kakashi said, "We'll take Kei with us and see if we can meet up with Anko and her team. After we put together whatever we have with theirs, then we can make a better assessment from this info." Everyone agreed and they packed up what they brought and left, heading to meet with Anko's team. 12 hours later, Land of Fire. Anko and her team kept running at a slower pace than they should since they needed to stop so Hyo could catch his breath every now and then. There was also the problem with the prisoner mouthing off to them every chance he got, which some words that pissed Anko off. They kept going down a path and were approaching a Land of Fire landmark, which was of a giant red statue of a fire. Takuma had the trademark Byakugan activated and saw the statue, telling Anko, "Ticho, Captain, I can see Kakashi's team up ahead." Anko told them, "Okay guys, let's pick up the pace a little." Kakashi and the others were sitting at the statue awaiting Anko and the others. Ko saw them with his Byakugan as well and told his team, "They are here." Kakashi was leaned up against the statue reading an orange book. He put it away and saw Anko and her team jump down in front of them. Hyo tossed the old man Rook off of his shoulders and in front of Kakashi, saying, "It was a pain in the ass to get here." Erashur walked over to the group and asked, "What did you find?" 10 minutes later. Both teams exchanged information that they acquired from the two men and were a bit pleased with the results. Kakashi summarized, since both men saw Kakuzu in what would appear to be the Land of the Moon, then it's either Kakuzu makes a regular appearance there, he goes there to meet his informants, lives there, or he likes to gamble. Hyo added, "Only twice have I seen Kakuzu in this guy's memories that he would make a journey to meet him on the coast. Also where they meet is a close proximity where the ferries take travelers to the island." Jin was thinking and said, "It would seem that Kei also meets him somewhere near the coast, but he went to the island for a little vacation and ran into Kakuzu by mistake. This can't be a coincidence, Kakuzu lives in Moon Country." Erashur looked to Kakashi and asked, "Will we alert the Hokage?" Kakashi continued listening to what the two Yamanakas said and came to the same conclusion. He did a few hand signs and slammed his hand on the ground. A small pop of smoke appeared and a small dark brown pug appeared wearing a blue vest and a Konoha headband. The little pug asked in a deep gruff voice, "Kakashi, what do you need this time?" Kakashi kneeled down and told the little pug named Pakin, "I need you to give Konoha the message that teams Kakashi and Anko have discovered a possible location of Kakuzu. Tell the Hokage that we have enough evidence to prove that Kakuzu is in Getsugekure, and that he'll need to send approval to Getsugekure to allow us entry to capture him." Pakin nodded and said, "Alright, where should I have the squad that comes for reinforcements come meet you?" Kakashi told Pakin, "In this location." "Got it?" Pakin lifts his paw and says, "No problem." Immediately the pug jetted off at amazing speeds, kicking a giant gust of dirt into the air. Ko asks Kakashi, "What will we do with Kei and Rook?" Kakashi looks from Ko to Erashur, and gives him a simple head nod. Erashur understood and did a few hand signs and slammed his hand into the ground, and like Kakashi a pop of smoke appeared by his hand. Out of the smoke popped a tiny green frog with two orange striped patterns on its back. Erashur tells the frog, "I need you to take these two men to my father as soon as possible." The hand-sized frog hops over to the two men and it flicks its tongue out at one man and wraps its appendage completely around the man and sucks the man into its small mouth somehow. After it swallows the first man, it looks to the second and does the same thing to him that it did to the other. Soon after swallowing both men, it disappears into the same puff of smoke it appeared in. Kakashi tells everyone, "Okay, now we will await the reinforcements here. Most likely it will take a day before they arrive, so we will set up camp a little ways off from this statue." No one objected and they followed Kakashi to a more suitable location to await their backup. 3 hours later, Konoha. Minato was going through a few files with dread, feeling how his evening was turning out, and the surprising information Itachi brought to his attention. As he was going through the last file, a knock at his door caught his attention. "Enter," said the Hokage. The door opened up, showing his secretary holding an all-too-familiar dog. Minato looked to his secretary and said, "You can leave him, I can handle it from here." His secretary nodded and placed the little dog on the floor and left the room. Minato walked around his desk to look at the dog, asking, "So Pakken, what did Kakashi and the others discover?" Pakken looked a little out of breath as he said, "Kakashi wanted me to tell you that they found a possible location of Kakuzu in Getsugekure, and he is requesting the squad you have for them and to send a message ahead to Getsugekure to let them move in." Minato nodded and told him, "I was expecting you for a while now. Not too long ago one of my toads came to me and brought with it some prisoners." "Well, Pakken, where are they?" Pakken told Minato, "They are at the statue landmark for Fire Country." "Know where it's at?" Minato nodded and said, "All right, Pakken, you're excused. I'll send the information and the reinforcements." Pakken nodded and disappeared in a puff of smoke, leaving Minato in his office, who immediately got to work on setting up the reinforcements and the parley to Getsugekure. The next day, Land of Fire landmark. Kakashi and the other ninjas were awaiting their reinforcements after the day passed. Takuma was keeping watch with his Byakugan activated and kept a close eye out for their team. He soon spotted them and alerted the others. The 8-man squad and the 3 Niken moved out to go meet the reinforcements. Kakashi and the others made it to the landmark and looked down the dirt path and saw the 4-man cell from Konoha and 6 ANBU ninjas behind them. There were 3 men and a woman running to meet them. The first man had black hair and a bowl-style haircut, bushy eyebrows, a bright green jumpsuit, a red headband tied around his waist, a green jounin vest, and orange leg warmers. The second man had brown eyes, short spiky black hair and beard, the standard Konoha uniform, a sash with the kanji for the word fire around his waist, a headband around his forehead, and 2 bracelets, one on each wrist. The third and final man had his headband converted into a bandana that covered the whole top of his head, black circle sunglasses, blue long-sleeve ninja shirt with red swirls on the shoulders, and blue ninja pants. The woman in the group had deep red eyes, long black curly hair, blue eyeshadow makeup, a deep red ninja sleeveless shirt, with a jounin vest over that, deep red ninja pants, arm wraps around her forearm, and a ninja headband around her forehead. When the team met up with Kakashi and the others, the bushy-browed man shouted, "Kakashi! My old friend, where do we go from here?" Kakashi said to him, "Good of you to make it, guy." Kakashi's eyes drifted to the man with the bandana and said, "Hey there, Ebisu." Ebisu adjusted his glasses and said, "Hello to you, to Kakashi-san." Enko moved next to the kunoichi who arrived and lightly elbowed the woman in her waist, teasing her a little. "Kurenai-chan, did you get any alone time with Asuma over there?" Kurenai looked to the bearded man, ignoring Enko a little, saying, "You're hopeless, Enko." Erasure broke up the little chit-chat between everyone, saying to Kakashi, "When do we leave, Kakashi? This is an important matter, and we are just wasting time when we could be moving." Everyone looked at Erasure, and how serious his tone was. Kakashi said to everyone, "Erasure has a point. We are about a few hours away from the coast where the ferry takes passengers to Getsugekure, or rather the Land of the Moon. Added that we do not know when the ferries run, so let's move out." Everyone nodded and they all dashed off to the coast trying to catch the man named Kakuzu. 2 hours later, Port Town, Land of the Moon. The Konoha ninjas made it to the town that ferries people from the numerous islands around the continent, and even taking cruises along the coastline all the way to Kiri. The large squadron met up with a Moon Nin who was awaiting their arrival from the letter they received from Minato many hours ago. The ninja chief was going to allow this, and even set up a team to where they recognized Kakuzu was staying at to make sure that he did in fact make it up to his villa. The large squad took a private boat that only Moon Nins were allowed to take for faster usage. The boat was large enough to take the large squad to the island. As everyone was standing around waiting to reach the island, Erasure and Hana were standing away from everyone else. The young kunoichi would steal a glance at him every chance she would get. This didn't go unnoticed by the young ninja, as he smiled at how she thought she was going unnoticed. Kakashi was being badgered by his rival about being asked to challenge him to a battle. Enko and Kurenai were at the front of the ship talking. Ko and Takuma were on the captain's deck relaxing for a moment. The ANBU were down below waiting as well. Asuma took to the starboard side smoking a cigarette with Ebisu telling him how bad that was for his health, and finally the 2 Yamanakas were sitting near the back of the boat with Hana's Niken. The Moon Nin was steering the boat. Takuma had his Byakugan activated and was just looking below the ocean out of boredom. After a while he focused his wide eyes out at sea, then something caught his attention. Ko noticed his family members straining of looking out into the water. Moving toward him he asks, "Takuma, did you see something?" Takuma pointed out to a section of the ocean, saying, "There's something flying over there. I can't make it out since it's too far away, but I can tell that it's heading back to the mainland." Ko shrugged it off, saying, "Maybe it's just a seagull or something." Takuma shook his head, saying, "It's too big to be in seagull." But it's huh? Ko looked at the perplexed look Takuma had on. What is it, Takuma? Takuma deactivated his Byakugan and said, it flew out of my range. Ko shook his head saying, look, I'm telling you, it might have been a bird, maybe even a few of them grouped together. Takuma was unsure though, but agreed nonetheless. The Moon Nin announced to everyone, we are approaching the island. All the Leaf Nin save for the NBU looked over the sides of the boat and could see the island. Airshire smiled and couldn't wait till they actually hit the land. A few minutes later the boat docked and the Konoha ninjas jumped off of the boat and were greeted by a few Moon Nins. One of them said the boat that docked about 15 to 20 minutes ago was carrying the passenger you were looking for. Your Kage sent us a picture along with the request that you apprehend him. Kakashi asked the man, how many men do you have trailing him? The Moon Nin started walking away and made a hand motion for them to follow. The Konoha ninjas followed the Moon Nins up a few trails and one in particular that led up to a lone villa. The Nin instructed Kakashi that Kakuzu was seen going in there. Kakashi told his team to spread fan out. When they did, they saw a few A and BU Moon Nins hiding. Hana, Ko, and Arashur were with Kakashi. The Kunoichi told Kakashi in a low voice, I can smell his scent going in the house. Ko squinted his eyes and said to Kakashi, there is a powerful genjutsu surrounding the house. I can't see inside, but I can recognize this type. If you disable it, then it will alert the caster. It also seems to be set up to a seal of the front door. Kakashi nodded to both Ko and Hana and he made a few hand movements for the ANBU to come in. 4 of the ANBU from Konoha moved quietly to the front of the home along with 3 Moon ANBU. Kakashi and the leading commander for the Moon Nins moved closer as well, but they distanced themselves. After a minute Kakashi made a final hand signal. The Konoha ninja agreed and kicked down the door went down and the 4-leaf ANBU rushed in along with the 3 Moon ANBU. Once the door went down, Ko saw something and shouted, everyone run! Immediately after he said that the house erupted into an explosion followed by a series of explosions around the house. Kakashi started to run as did the other Nins, but the explosions were taking out a chunk of the cliff area causing a few of the ninjas to lose their footing and fall off. A few more explosions went off and Kakashi, another ANBU, and Hana lost their footing as the ground collapsed from under them. One of the ANBU Nins looked and saw them fall, and so did Arashur. The blonde Nin turned around and jumped off of the cliff to where Hana was. The ANBU on the other hand closed his hands together and shouted, with style. Wooden tentacles came out of the cliff and wrapped around Kakashi before he was halfway down the cliff. Kakashi gave him a thumbs up for the save, but he couldn't save his fellow ANBU comrade who fell to his death. Meanwhile Arashur was able to dive after Hana. He grabbed her by her arm and held on to her tight. He spun around and pulled out a tri-pronged kunai, tossing it with all his might straight up in the air. The kunai went up at least 7 feet above the cliff wall, and the 2 ninjas disappeared and reappeared to prove the cliff. Arashur reached out and grabbed the cliff top. Enko and Ebisu rushed over to help the 2 ninjas up. The ANBU Nin made his wooden jutsu pull Kakashi safely up. Once everyone was safe, they retreated farther away so as not to risk the chance of another set of explosions. After everyone caught their breath, more Moon Nins appeared to see what happened. Ko walked over to Kakashi and said, the moment they kicked the door down, the genjutsu broke, but once it did, the seal activated, the explosive tag set in and around the house. Arashur quickly asked, did you see anyone in the house? Ko shook his head. Even as the explosions were going off, the only bodies I could see were the ANBU that went in. I didn't see anyone else. Arashur breathed a sigh of relief and frustration. Asuma was with them and said quite possibly he set up the trap knowing he was followed. He pulled out another cigarette and lit it, saying, he probably descended down the cliff edge and made it around that way. One Moon Nin interjected, that's impossible. The waves that come in from that side of the island are vicious, the walls are always extremely wet, the winds are savagely strong, and you can't walk on the water since the waves are too strong and will smash you against the cliffs. You can't even post a boat on that side of the island, let alone swing past that area. Kakashi tried to think of a rational explanation, but came up with none. Takuma immediately came forward and asked the Moon Nin, what about flight or gliding? The ninjas close to Kakashi looked to Takuma. The ninja simply answered, well, yeah, that is a possibility. The winds could carry you far off, but gliding won't do much since you'll hit the sea regardless. The waves could carry you back to the mainland, but by swimming it would take you more than an hour to do so, and even before then you'd drown from exhaustion. Flying would be out since our Nins were posted along the house. I'm sure they would have seen a flying contraption. Takuma said to him, before we docked I saw something with my Byakugan. Something big flying away from the island. Now I'm not saying exactly that it was Kakuzu, but if Ko didn't see any other bodies aside from the ninjas that went in, then it is a strong possibility that he used something to fly away from the island undetected. Kakashi rubbed his chin and said, that is possible, but we won't know. We have to return home. The mission has ended in failure. 5 of our men are dead and 3 of Getsugeki's Nins are dead. We can't do anything more here. Erasure immediately punched the ground under him out of frustration, saying, "Shit! We were so close and yet he got away! Shit! Shit! Shit!" Hana heard him shout and walked over to Erasure and placed a comforting hand on his back. Guy finished talking to a few ninjas and walked over to Kakashi, saying, "Kakashi, we have to go. The Getsu chief wants us to leave. He doesn't blame us for what has happened, but he clearly said that this is their problem now. He also said that his ninjas will be on the look for Kakuzu and a kill on sight has been issued by them." Kakashi nodded and shouted to his fellow leaf nins, "Come on, we're going home." Everyone agreed and they followed Kakashi to the pier. Erasure was disappointed in himself that he failed. Everything about his baby brother was right there within his grasp, and yet it was gone just as quickly as they found it. Hana kept trying to tell him that they will find his trail again and not to worry, but that didn't help the young ninja, not at all. A mere 20 minutes earlier, Land of the Moon. Kakuzu was on the ferry boat that takes travelers to the Land of the Moon. As the boat reached the island, Kakuzu knew what he needed to do. Once the boat docked, Kakuzu made his way off of the boat and up to the rich district. Walking up the path to his home, he could see his home clearly, though he wasn't stupid. He knew that he was being followed and watched by a few ninjas that have been following him since he got off the boat. Taking a glance around to make absolute certainty that he was being followed, he realized he still was and now needed to set up as quickly as he needed to. He closed the door and walked inside, not bothering to take off his sandals. It took him a while to get home since he went around to a few banks to withdraw his money and move it elsewhere. When he reached the living room, he saw that Naruto was passed out on the floor. Around his feet were many leaves that had deep gashes in them. He immediately looked to his left. He saw the tiger mask approach him. He held out his arm and the mask slipped into his cloak arm sleeve and back into his body. Kakuzu then received the memory from the mask, and it seemed that after Naruto woke up after cutting the first leaf, he began to do the same to all the others, though not slicing it completely in half. He picked up one of the many leaves and began inspecting it to make sure Naruto didn't use some kind of trick. He felt a pang of pride knowing Naruto got this far on his own. Though he quickly looked around and walked into his room, grabbing a backpack and loading up on some weapons. He walked into the kitchen and grabbed food that would last them until they reached Shadow Country. After grabbing everything they would need, he pulled out a blanket and wrapped Naruto up in it, and walked out to the back of the house on the deck. The villa was half on the land, but halfway over the cliffs of the island, giving them a good look of the sea. Kakuzu had Naruto in his right hand and the backpack dangling in his left. Kakuzu's back began to move and web-like wings burst through his cloak. With his left hand he made a one-handed sign and a few shimmering lights came from inside the house, then a few seals appeared around the house. After a minute the lights faded and Kakuzu shut the balcony door leading into the house and then flew off. He flew far enough to circle around the island without being seen, and then headed for the main continent. Kakuzu was now in no real hurry. After all, there was no need to now. A day later, Land of Shadows. Naruto woke up sometime after they landed on the coast and asked what happened. Kakuzu filled him in and told him that Konoha came to their home and he needed to take care of them. The little ninja didn't argue. It didn't take the duo long to reach the Land of Shadows, but Kakuzu didn't have an exact idea as to where the base's location was. He was only asked to come to the Land of Shadows. Naruto was walking quietly next to Kakuzu, taking notice of his surroundings. Despite the name Shadows, it was a relatively lively place. Animals were everywhere. Plants and flowers were growing everywhere. Naruto started to think that with an ominous name like that he'd expected it to be dark and very intimidating. Naruto tugged on Kakuzu's sleeve asking, "Dad, where are we going exactly?" Kakuzu didn't look at Naruto, but he answered, "Don't know yet, but I'll know when we get there." Needless to say, he was so reassured with that answer, but like a loyal dog he followed. Continuing for some time, Kakuzu felt another chakra source. He wasn't an expert when it came to sensing chakra signatures, but he could sense the stronger ones. Kakuzu held his hand out to stop Naruto, saying, "We got company." Naruto and Kakuzu then saw the ground in front of them shift and rise. Whatever it was began to take form of a giant Venus flytrap. The strange plant opened up, revealing a man where the left half of his body was white and the other half was black, short green hair, yellow eyes, and the same kind of cloak Kisame and Sasori were wearing when they appeared to him. Naruto examined the strange man and noticed that the black half of his body was missing a mouth and a nose. He also noted that once the man's full body was seen, that his feet were both white instead of his right being black. His hands were hidden underneath his sleeves of his cloak, so he wasn't sure how far along the black half went down the body. The strange man spoke, but his voice seemed to be two people talking at once. My, this young lad isn't scared of me at all? That is interesting. Most children his age would be at least surprised, but he has no emotion in those blue eyes at all. Naruto said to him, "Well, I'm not most children." The fly trap man's white half smiled, showing unusually round teeth. Kakuzu started by asking, "Are you with Akatsuki?" The human plant looked to Kakuzu saying, Where are my manners? My name is Zetsu, and yes, I am part of Akatsuki. More like I am the spy that finds the more interesting info for our organization. Zetsu turned around and headed off the dirt path saying, our leader is waiting for you. He was hoping that you'd accept his invitation. Kakuzu and Naruto didn't immediately follow, but they did follow after Naruto looked to Kakuzu to see if it was okay. Kakuzu made a head movement for Naruto, meaning that it was okay. The duo followed Zetsu off the path and into a forest in the lining area. Sundown, Konoha, Hokage Tower. All the ninjas who took part on the mission to Moon were standing in single file in front of Minato's desk after reporting the deaths of their ninjas and the ninjas of Moon, also relaying that Kakuzu knew of that he was being followed and set up a trap for them and escaped. Inside the office along with Minato were Kushina and Jiraiya. The sage ninja returned when Minato relayed information to him through the toads. After hearing all the info they told him, he finally said to all of them, so close to. Well, there is nothing else we can do. I'll send messages to the Moon Chief and talk with him. You can all leave now, head on home and get some rest. All the ninjas bowed and said in a low voice, Hi Hokage-sama. All of them were unenthusiastic as they all left one by one. All except for Erasure, who stayed inside his father's office. Erasure refused to meet their eyes and he told them, I failed. Jiraiya was the first to speak, saying in a carefree tone, Don't worry, kid. With all the info we gathered, I can set up my network to look out for the guy. I also found out a little bit of info that could give us a little insight about Kakuzu. Apparently this guy is all about money and every one of his jobs I found out about had very high prices. Though that will get someone so far, but with someone like me searching I'll get to the bottom of this. Jiraiya walked from behind Minato's desk over to Erasure, placing a hand on his shoulder telling him, just let me handle it from here. The blonde nin instead shook his head saying, No, I can't do that, Ji-sen. I made a promise to Mom and Dad that I'd bring Naruto back myself, and I intend to keep that promise. Jiraiya moved his hand from Arashi's shoulder to pat him on the head and he said to his former student, Don't worry Minato, Kushina-chan, I'll find where Kakuzu is hiding out in no time at all and I'll be sure to fill you in on whatever I find. Deal? Minato let a small laugh escape his lips and he responded, Deal. I'll just tell the council that you're on your usual routine and will check up from time to time. Jiraiya, satisfied with that, waved goodbye to the family and left the office, shutting the door behind him. Kushina walked over to her son and gave him a heartfelt hug, trying to cheer him up. I'm not upset at all. If you say that you'll bring Naruto back, then I have every faith in you that you will. Don't beat yourself up over it. Erasure slowly returned his mother's hug and he could hear his father say, Erasure, I'm giving you some leave for at least a month so you could relax. Erasure was about to argue, but Dad. Minato cut him off saying, This is an order as your Kage, not your father. It's not forever, just for a month. It will do you some good. Also you could start after I tell you of a request a fellow nin asked of me. Kushina broke away from her son and walked over to where the couch was and sat quietly. Erasure was a bit confused and asked his father, what kind of request? The young Hokage pressed a button on his intercom allowing to connect with his secretary. Send him in, please. 2 minutes later the door opened up, revealing Itachi donning his ANBE uniform except for his mask. Itachi walked over till he was side by side with his rival, looking at the Hokage. Minato made the ox hand sign allowing a seal to appear on the ground, ceiling, walls, and windows of his office. After that was done he addressed them, This room is soundproof and has genjutsu casted on the windows so no one can see in to read our lips. Erasure could now tell that his father was dead serious by the look in his eyes. Minato asked Itachi, Itachi-san, could you fill my son in on what you told me? More of a statement than a request. Itachi however agreed and he turned to Erasure telling him, Recently my clan have been acting a little suspicious. Though difficult to explain, I found out that my father Fugaku Uchiha is planning a coup. Needless to say, Erasure was stunned. I brought this information to your father and the council, along with some evidence that can back up my statements. When the coup will occur I do not know, but I know that it will be soon and that we must act. Minato cut in saying, Erasure, the council came to a vote when this information was brought to us. We cannot publicly come out to Fugaku letting him know that we know of his plans. If we did, then he could become desperate in his situation and attack. Fugaku apparently recently informed Itachi on the coup, but as Itachi said, he doesn't know when it will occur. Itachi also said that he tried to talk his father out of it, but Fugaku wouldn't hear him out, so negotiations are out as well. Minato pulled out a scroll and placed it on his desk, rolling it on its side till it reached his son. Erasure picked up the scroll and he heard his father say, Within that scroll, son, is a modified flak jacket with numerous tri-pronged kunais with the Hiraishin no Jutsu formula on them already. Erasure, Sai, you and Itachi are to go into the Uchiha compound and kill off every one of the Uchiha clansmen, and by everyone I mean everyone. Itachi however requested that only Sasuke be spared in this attack, so you find Sasuke and leave him alive. Everyone else must be killed. Erasure looked over to Itachi, and he saw that he was still stoic as ever, No emotion was being shown on his face. Minato, however, asked Itachi, is there any way you can get Sasuke out of your compound ahead of time? Like if I have Haru ask him to stay the night over at the Hokage's mansion. Itachi thought about it and simply agreed, I can try. Kushina butted in saying, I can have Haru invite her friends over for a sleepover, that way it's guaranteed that Sasuke will come over if his friends are there. The three ninjas in the room agreed that that was a good idea. Minato said to both Itachi and Erasure, prepare yourselves, you attack tomorrow night once the district surrounding the Uchiha compound has gone dark. A and B will be set up around the perimeter to keep any Uchihas from escaping. I've already had Hayashi send over his clansmen to scope out underground escape routes. No one gets out, am I understood? Both men said in unison, Hi. Minato was happy with the answer and said, now I want to know what you will do now, Itachi. Itachi rose his eyebrow asking, beg your pardon? Minato asked, I mean, what will you do after the Uchiha clan have been killed? Erasure and Kushina stared at Itachi wondering what his answer will be. It took him a while, but he answered truthfully, I will rebuild. I will rebuild the Uchiha clan to its once former glory. I couldn't stand by and watch as my clan were planning on killing many in order to control the village, I just couldn't. Itachi looked over at Erasure saying, I can't do this alone, Erasure, I needed help from someone who is on the same level as me and can hold his own. That is why I requested that the Hokage allow you to join me on this. I don't mind helping a friend in need, Itachi, said Erasure. Itachi gave his rival a simple smile, and then held his hand out for Erasure to shake his hand. Erasure reached his hand out, and they both shook one another's hand. Minato told the two, well, head out and relax till tomorrow. Kushina told Itachi, don't worry, I'll make sure Sasuke gets his invitation. Itachi accepted that and thanked her. Minato yawned and looked at the time saying, well, we have a lot to do. I'm gonna lock up early and I suggest that you two get some rest. Again both ninjas agreed and Itachi was the first to leave. Minato dropped the seals around his office and he took his leave with Kushina and Erasure preparing for the upcoming trouble. Land of Shadows, Akatsuki Base. The three ninjas traveled deep into the forest for quite some time before coming to a stop at a cliff side that had a seal just sitting at the base of the cliff. Setsu spoke, telling the two, we're here. He brought his ghostly white hand up, making a one-handed hand sign. After he did so, the seal was glowing for a moment before the wall began to open up outward, revealing a dark cave. Setsu turned and looked at Kakuzu this way. Setsu headed in first, followed by Kakuzu and Naruto. The cave was huge and wide open, with the only source of light coming from numerous candles all lined along the cave wall. Kakuzu looked ahead and saw what looked to be a holographic figure in a rainbow spectrum. The figure turned around, showing his eyes, ones that Kakuzu converted to memory as he recognized them instantly. Setsu spoke to the figure first. I've brought Kakuzu as you requested, leader. The holographic image told Setsu, good work. Now Kakuzu, does this mean that you'll join us? Naruto moved a little behind Kakuzu in case something were to happen. Kakuzu was not nervous of any kind, but he was on guard though. You're not giving me much choice. Chances are that you'll kill me if I say no, and if I say yes, then that means I'm in a permanent position. Though recent events caused me to show my hand in a sense, so I'm in. The strange spiky-haired hollow figure pointed to his left, where hanging on the wall was a black cloak with the red clouds. There is your uniform. Every member in this organization has a teammate, you'll get yours soon enough. Kakuzu walked over to the cloak with Naruto right behind him. He took off his current cloak and tossed it to the side and put on the new one. It fit him perfectly. The one called leader told Kakuzu, reach into your left cloak pocket. Kakuzu did as he was told and reached into his pocket, pulling out a silver ring with a light blue color and the kanji 4 north on the ring. The leader spoke again, telling him, place it on your left middle finger. Again doing as he was told, Kakuzu slid the ring on the intended finger. The hologram disappeared and reappeared next to Kakuzu, saying, what I told you that day in Moon was the truth. We capture the tail beasts that the nations have and we will seal them inside a statue, and that as long as you're with this organization you will have a place in the new world. No more running, no more hiding, only freedom and peace await. Kakuzu liked the idea of no longer having to conceal who he was and was really tired of it all. He looked to Naruto and then back to his boss, asking, what of Naruto? The man's strange ripple-like eyes seemed to pierce Naruto's very soul, but despite this the young boy didn't show any fear or even a hint of it, and instead he stood his ground. He looked back at Kakuzu, saying, naturally he'll have a position in our organization, but as he is, he cannot be a full-fledged member. I know who this boy truly is and his heritage the moment I saw him in the forest. Kakuzu looked at the man with interest, asking, how do you know? The leader looked over to Setsu, saying, Setsu is our spy that lets us in on the littlest details. This organization has been around for a very long time, but we were more underground, hiding in the shadows as we prepared our plan. So when we found out that the Yondaime Hokage sealed away the Kyuubi inside his own daughter, and well, you know the rest from there. Kakuzu told him, I get it, so what will he do? Zetsu walked over telling him, I had the idea to use the boy to capture the Kyuubi right from underneath the village's nose. Kakuzu looked to Naruto and told him, Naruto, go to the other side of the cave. He didn't argue and he quickly ran over to the other side of the cave as he was told. Naruto was not in hearing range, the only thing he would be able to hear is muffled voices at the most. The Hollow Man clarified, since he is the son of the Yondaime Hokage, then we could use him. Have him get close to his sister and get him to lure her away from the others, and in which case you and your partner will capture her. Kakuzu asked, don't you think that's risky? How will we accomplish this? Zetsu answered, well, to make sure he has a definite advantage over the other students, I suggested that you and your partner train him for another 2 years, and in which case we send him back to Konoha. Sure, they may be skeptical at first, but that's why the initial capture won't occur until he turns 13. That way we have a surefire chance that he will capture her. Basically, he'll get them to drop their guard around him. The leader told him, Konoha will be suspicious, which is why we need Naruto to make them believe that he is okay. I have a plan all set up, all we need is your okay. I won't force a child to do this when they are not capable of handling it. Kakuzu glanced over to where Naruto was and thought it over. Kakuzu kept running scenarios in his mind asking, you have it foolproof, right? Truthfully, the leader answered, nothing is foolproof, just like everything else this plan does have a flaw, or rather many flaws. It all depends on how dedicated the boy is to accomplishing it. After giving it some thought, Kakuzu tells him, okay. Naruto will do it. Now what's your name, leader? The man told Kakuzu, my name is Pain. Welcome to our organization, Kakuzu. As Pain's hologram began to fade, he told him, I suggest you start training the boy now, and if need be I'll send an Akatsuki member to help train him. Also, if he can successfully accomplish this mission, or if his skills improve dramatically, then I might just consider adding him as a permanent member in Akatsuki. After his image faded, Kakuzu shouted to Naruto, Naruto, come here. Naruto rushed over to Kakuzu and Zetsu. Kakuzu told Naruto, get ready. I will be training you non-stop from now until you turn 10. If you thought your previous training days were tough, think again. I got 2 years to really teach you, and we will make use of every second of it. Got it? Under his mask, Naruto gave a big grin at that, saying proudly, I'll take it. Whatever kind of training you give me, Dad, I'll be ready, and I won't stop until I die. Zetsu made an impressed whistle sound saying, boys got guts. Zetsu tapped Kakuzu on his shoulder to get his attention saying, we got a little training room set up for when we acquire a new jutsu that they want to use. It's just down that tunnel and you'll see the second open room. Kakuzu thanks him for telling him, and he quickly motions for Naruto to follow him. Zetsu watched them leave and his body began to merge with the ground until he was completely gone. Morning, Konoha, Hokage Mansion. Haru was sleeping peacefully in her bed when she felt someone kiss her on her cheek. She sat up, rubbing her eyes to wake herself up. Looking to whoever kissed her, she saw her mother sitting on her bed with a warming smile. Haru smiled as well, saying, good morning, Kasan. Kushina again leaned down and kissed her on her forehead, this time saying to her daughter, good morning to you too, Haru-chan. Haru slid off of her bed to look in her mirror. Her long blonde hair was not in a braid yet. It was usually her mother who put her hair in the braid, although she did learn to braid her hair herself. Kushina pulled a chair that was in her daughter's room and sat behind her daughter and began to braid her hair slowly. Haru asked her mother, Kasan, do you think it would be okay if I stayed the night at Hinata-chan's? Kushina told her daughter, wouldn't it be funner if we asked Hinata-chan, Sakura-chan, Ino-chan, and a few of your other friends over to have a sleepover here? Haru's eyes lit up and she asked, really? Kasan, I'd like that a lot. Kushina smiled wider and said, okay, then let's me and you go to your friends' houses and we'll send an invite. How about we have them come over at lunchtime? Haru agreed with that and let her mother finish braiding her hair. She couldn't wait to have a sleepover with all her friends. As soon as she was done, Haru tossed off her nightgown. Running to her closet, she quickly put on an orange shirt with 2 vertical blue lines and a pair of blue shorts. Kushina said, oh, aren't you excited? Haru grabbed her mother's hand and said, come on, Kasan, let's go. When they walked out into a hallway, Haru made one quick stop to her brother's room. She pushed the door open and stood in the doorway saying, hey bro, guess what? I'm having a sleepover. That's when all your friends come over and you play games, stay up late, and do all other fun things. Kushina walked into the room next, looking around the room and continued listening to her daughter. Haru happily said next, when you come back I'll have the biggest sleepover just for you, brother. Just you wait, Naruto. The room they were in was a room with blue wallpaper and a red swirl on the ceiling, a neatly made kid-sized bed, an empty dresser, and a toy box with a few toys in it. Kushina looked at the door, and it had a plaque on it that had Naruto's room written on it. Kushina patted her daughter's head and said, come on, Haru-chan. Haru smiled and said one last thing before she left, don't worry, brother, Aniki will bring you home and we'll have all kinds of fun. Haru let one tear fall from her eye and she wiped it away and grabbed her mother to drag her out of the room. Kushina turned around to close the door. but paused when she saw that at the foot of the bed was a little messed up as if someone was just sitting in it. She already knew who it was and she shut the door and followed her daughter downstairs. In the dining room was Erasure eating some pancakes he made himself while reading a magazine about dogs. He stopped reading for a moment when he heard someone running and he turned his head and saw Haru run up to him happily shouting, "Aniki! Ka-san is taking me to my friends' houses so I can invite them for a sleepover. Isn't that cool?" Erasure smiled and said, "Well, that's cool. I'm sure you don't want your big brother there to embarrass you, right?" Haru nodded and said, "Yeah, that's right. You always embarrass me. So you can say hi, but then you have to go to your room and not bug us." Erasure simply smiled and said, "Will do." Kushina made it downstairs, but Haru ran past her to put her sandals on. Kushina took a moment and asked Erasure, "Was your father in Naruto's room?" Erasure turned to look at his mother and answered, "Huh? Oh yeah, he was. I saw him this morning before he left for the office. I saw Naruto's door open and I saw him sitting on Naruto's bed." She simply sighed and said, "Thought so." Haru was in Naruto's room talking to him again. Erasure said to his mother, "Yeah, she's hoping that wherever he is that he can hear her. Oh, by the way, Itachi is going to come by here later tonight before we head out. Sasuke is not to know." Kushina nodded and said, "Of course, or did you forget that your mother was a jounin before she became a devoted housewife and mother?" Erasure chuckled and said, "No, I didn't forget, Ka-san. Have fun." Kushina soon walked out of the house and saw her daughter waiting by the front gate. Haru ran over and grabbed her mother's hand and led her to the first house, unaware of what was going to occur that night. Land of Shadows, Akatsuki Hideout. Naruto's mask was completely gone, his face and hair were completely visible and his outfit was in shreds. Kakuzu was sitting off to the side and watched as Naruto continued his grueling training. Naruto's mission was to get to Kakuzu all the while dodging all the jutsus that would be coming after him. Kakuzu started running through some hand signs at amazing speed, shouting, "Earth style, sinkhole!" The ground underneath Naruto collapsed and attempted to swallow him. He acted quickly, however, by tossing a kunai with a metal thread attached to it to the ceiling of the base, allowing him to swing away. Kakuzu immediately did another jutsu, shouting, "Lighting style, disastrous lighting shot." He held his arms out, allowing lighting bolts to extend from his hand and shoot toward Naruto. Again the little blonde acted quickly by grabbing and throwing 6 kunai into the ground in front of where he landed. The lighting headed toward Naruto hit the kunais and didn't go any further. Naruto tugged on the metal wire, allowing it to fall in his hand, and he tossed it at Kakuzu. The nuke nin, however, tilted his head to the side, avoiding the kunai. He did some more hand signs and shouted again, "Fire style, scorching downpour." Kakuzu moved his mask down, and he blew out from his mouth hundreds of tiny fire needles that shot into the air, but then soon fell back down, aimed at Naruto. Nearly exhausted, Naruto continued on, ducking and dodging as many of the deadly fire attacks. Though small, the attacks were very fast and burned everything they touched quickly, so you could imagine the burns you'd get if you were hit by more than one. Naruto continued through the exhaustion and kept moving forward despite it all. As he got closer, Kakuzu did one hand sign saying, "Earth style, earth clone." A muddy figure appeared ahead of Naruto in the form, shape, and color of Kakuzu. Not surprised at all, Naruto pressed on, pulling out and throwing many shurikens that hit and stuck into the clone. He moved in to finish it off by picking up kunai laying on the floor and attempted to slice its head off. Though the clone blocked every hit Naruto threw at it, and even used the kunai embedded in its body to try and cut Naruto. Trying to elude the clone, Naruto gathered chakra into his feet, attracting 2 shurikens that were on the ground from his previous tries. He kicked out and the 2 shurikens flew at the clone, but before the clone could react, one of the shurikens shot past the clone and headed for Kakuzu's real body. Both Kakuzu and the clone turned their bodies to dodge the shurikens. The earth clone looked back to see that Naruto leapt over it and looped the metal wire around the clone's head, and he pulled the wire hard enough to decapitate the clone's head, and Naruto watched it fall apart into mud. Not wasting any time, Naruto dashed over to Kakuzu and he got close enough to grab him, but he immediately stopped and ducked to the side, avoiding a wire trap that almost got his foot. Setsu slowly appeared behind Kakuzu, asking, "Don't you think you're overdoing it? You've been training this kid into the dirt since you got here with only a total of an hour break." Kakuzu continued with the assault, watching him carefully. Kakuzu did one more hand sign saying, "Earth style, earth clones." Emerging from the ground were 2 earth clones this time instead of the 1. The clones rushed at Naruto, engaging the small boy in hand-to-hand combat. Kakuzu answered Zetsu while he watched Naruto fight, saying, "No, he doesn't need rest. I know his limits, and let's just say that he's got another good 3 hours." Zetsu watched the training with interest and then walked over to a scroll that had its contents unsealed. Examining it, he saw a clear gourd filled with water and a single hay straw. Zetsu asked him about it. "What is all this?" Kakuzu didn't have to see it to know what it was. "That's called Hero's water from my village." Zetsu was a little surprised, asking, So this is the hero's water. Do you make him drink this? Kakuzu shook his head. Yes and no, in large portions you could die, but I found a way around that. I only give him a single drop of hero's water at a time, and from long periods of time so he doesn't succumb to the affects. It also seems to increase his chakra reserves and small does, which shows his large chakra source. I estimate that by the time he's 13 he'll have the chakra reserves rivaling the one-tailed demon. Zetsu said, that's gonna be pretty damn impressive for a kid, but how are you gonna get him to drink when he's in Konoha? Kakuzu answered, that is where you come in. Since I now know that you are the spy, then you should have no trouble getting in and out of Konoha. Zetsu's white half visibly smiled, saying, anything to help out. The two ninjas sat back and watched Naruto fight off the earth clones with his impressive stamina. 11 o'clock, Konoha, Hokage Mansion. Haru was in the family living room along with all her friends, Hinata, Ino, Sakura, Shikamaru, Choji, Sasuke, Kiba, and Shino. They were all playing games with the exception of Shino and Sasuke, who sat off to the side watching them. Kushina was in the other room talking with Itachi and her son, who were about to head out. Erasure told his mother, okay, so when news of this gets out Itachi will be seen as a hero for this, but at the same time Konoha will lose a major strength. Both Itachi and Erasure were wearing ANBU ninja outfits. Itachi cold-heartedly said, it's a sacrifice that must be made. The Uchiha clan must not succeed or else this could turn into a civil war and other nations might move in during the commotion. The sacrifice of one family to save the hundreds we have in Konoha is well worth it. Kushina asked Itachi, how will Sasuke-kun take it? Itachi told her simply, he has no choice but to accept what has happened. If he hates me for doing this then I can accept that, but this is the world we live in, not everyone gets happy ending. Erasure looked over at the clock in the room and stood up telling his mother, it's close to the time, we have to go meet Dad at the Uchiha compound. Kushina stood up too and gave her son a good luck kiss on his cheek. Be careful out there, Arashi-kun. I don't know what I'd do if I lost you too. Erasure gave her reassurance and said, I'll be fine mom, don't worry. Kushina also looked to Itachi and gave him a light kiss on the cheek and said, you be careful out there too, despite what Sasuke-kun may think afterward he'll need you. Itachi simply gave her an understanding nod and then the two ninjas walked to where the kids were to say goodbye for the night. Haru saw her brother in ANBU armor, and Itachi was wearing his as well. She ran over to her brother asking, where are you going, Aniki? Erasure kneeled down and placed his hand on the top of her head, giving her a smile. Aniki has to go with Itachi for some late night training. I'll see all of you in the morning, so don't worry. Haru only could nod understanding. Sasuke walked over to his big brother too and asked him, you promised that you'll be back in the morning? Itachi kept his usual gaze and told his little brother, yes, Sasuke-kun. He asked Itachi another question, oh by the way, can we head home in the morning? Kao-san said that she wanted to take me to get some new clothes, so I wanted to be there when you got back. Itachi didn't answer him, he only told Erasure, we should go now Erasure before we are late. Erasure agreed and he looked to Sasuke saying, I'll see ya later Sasuke-kun. He stood up and told the rest of Haru's friends, okay guys, have fun. All of the kids told him okay, and they watched the two leave out the front door. Itachi and Erasure stood outside the front door for a moment before grabbing their ANBU masks that were strapped to their backs and put them on. Itachi's was a weasel mask and Arashi's was toad mask. After putting on their masks they jumped off to where Minato was waiting for them. Kushina meanwhile was inside getting all the kids to set up their sleeping bags in the living room and to go upstairs to brush their teeth before going to bed. The kids set up their sleeping beds and slowly went upstairs with their toothbrushes in hand. This was really the first time the kids were allowed upstairs in the Hokage's house since they were told by their parents that they shouldn't joke or disturb the Hokage's home and should be respectful. As they went upstairs, Choji saw a door that had a plaque on it, and he then read it out loud, Naruto's room. Hey Haru-chan, who's Naruto? All the kids stopped and looked to where Choji was looking and they saw the room and wondered the same thing. Hinata asked her, I is the HH Hokage and your Ka-san expecting a baby? All of the kids had their attention at Haru, who was staring intently on the door, but found her voice and answered, Nah, that was my twin brother's room. Kiba asked her, I didn't know you had a twin. What happened to him? Ino elbowed him in the side and said, you have to be brain dead. Kiba looked at Haru, who looked a little sad and understood that it was a sensitive subject. Sakura spoke up after the silence, anyways guys, let's go brush our teeth like Kushina-sama told us to. Everyone agreed and headed to the bathroom. Shikamaru and Hinata stopped and noticed that Haru didn't move yet. Shikamaru asked her, Haru-chan, you okay? Haru finally snapped out of her trance and said happily, putting up a fake smile, Hi, I'm okay. The little girl ran to the bathroom, avoiding both Shikamaru and Hinata's worried looks. Hinata said to Shikamaru, do you think she'll be okay? Shikamaru shrugged his shoulders, I dunno, but she's tough, nothing we should really worry about. Hinata accepted that answer and the two walked to the bathroom to brush their teeth to get ready for bed. 12 o'clock, Uchiha compound. Itachi and Erasure were leaping house to house quietly to where they were told to rendezvous with Minato. The two came to a stop when they saw him standing on a house looking into the direction of the Uchiha compound, and they landed behind him bowing on one knee. Minato saw them and said, "Good, you're both here. Here is the situation. I alerted all the clans that there was going to be a kind of drill and that I ordered all clans to remain indoors until morning. I posted ANBU in the perimeter around the Uchiha compound with my tri-pronged kunai in case any try to escape. There are also Hyugas posted along with them in case they try and hide in the bunkers underground. Keep your radios on the channel 3. Understood?" Erasure and Itachi didn't speak, only nodding. Minato exclaimed, "Good, now it's all you two. Good luck." Erasure pulled out a scroll and unsealed its content, which was the modified flak jacket with the numerous kunais. He strapped on the jacket, and he disappeared along with Itachi. Minato watched their movement, and an ANBU appeared out of the shadow saying, "Hokage-sama, the perimeter is complete." Minato said, "Good, thank you, Ferret. Return to your post and remember to use my jutsu in case you can't handle the situation." The ANBU Nin bowed and then disappeared back into the shadows. Minato sighed, "It's time." Minato waited 10 minutes, and that's when he heard it, screams of terror and battle cries. Even though they were about to betray Konoha, he couldn't help but feel his heart ache hearing the screams and then suddenly disappearing, knowing that their lives were ended. He had no choice but to shut off his emotions at that point, and was forced to stand there and listen to all the voices that disappeared into the night. Midnight, Akatsuki hideout. Naruto was currently sprawled out on the ground, exhausted to the point of blacking out completely, but the 8-year-old refused to pass out and fought through it. Kakuzu watched as Naruto tried to force himself to stand up. Zetsu was off to the side as well, enjoying the performance the little ninja put on, and he did like to observe unique ninjas, and Naruto was one of them. Zetsu asked Kakuzu, "You gonna help him up?" Kakuzu shook his head. "No, he's fine, he just needs to catch his second wind and he'll be okay." Zetsu's wife half grinned, asking, "You have a lot of faith in this boy. Do you really think he could pull off this mission?" Kakuzu shrugged his shoulders, "Don't know. That is if Naruto is really dedicated to this mission." They both saw Naruto finally stand up, and he grabbed his arm to stop it from bleeding. Kakuzu held out his hand and a thread came out and pierced Naruto's skin, closing up the wound. Kakuzu walked over to Naruto, asking him, "You ready to keep going?" Naruto kept his expressionless face, answering, "Hi, I can still go on." Kakuzu reached into his pocket and pulled out a leaf, handing it over to him. He said, "Good, pick up where you left off." Naruto immediately got to work and took a meditating post-ion. Kakuzu walked away from Naruto and over to Zetsu. "Just watch, that kid will shake the world." Zetsu watched as Kakuzu left. Soon after saying that, the plant human looked back to Naruto and saw him concentrating on the leaf. Zetsu said to himself at that point, "This kid is interesting." Another voice came from Zetsu, but his mouth didn't move, agreed. Soon he moved to the side and watched Naruto continue his training. 2 years later, Konoha, Hokage Mansion. Kushina was in the garden tending to the new batches of roses that were beginning to bloom, making sure they had plenty of water. As she was tending to the plants, she felt a presence behind her and couldn't help but smile. In one swift motion, she picked up her gardening shovel and blocked a kunai that came down on her head and quickly disarmed her attacker by bending the arm back, making the one attacking drop the kunai. She immediately reached out and grabbed the attacker by the collar of their shirt and knocked her attacker to the ground, putting the small garden shovel to the neck. After all of that, she kept her smile and said, "That was a nice try, Haruchan.